It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Jason, Alex, and Andy are here. Jason has his reviews of the new Apple hardware. We'll talk about that. Of course, new versions of iOS and macOS are out. What are the new features? Before we get into the show, though, do me a little bit of a favor, would you? We just have a few more days left on our Twit survey. This is how we get to know you better. It's quick, it's painless, and of course, it's not obligatory, but we do appreciate any information you want to give us. Just go to twit.tv/survey23. It helps us make better programming for you. It helps us tell our advertisers what they're getting when they buy a Twit show, and it really makes a difference to our business. Twit.tv/survey23. If you would, take it right now. MacBreak Weekly is next.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 854, recorded Tuesday, January 24th, 2023, in the pocket of Big Leo. This episode of MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by Melissa. Over 10,000 clients worldwide in industries like retail, education, healthcare, insurance, finance, and government rely on Melissa for full-spectrum data quality and ID verification software. Make sure your customer contact data is up to date. Get started today with 1,000 records cleaned for free at melissa.com/twit. Thanks for listening to this show. As an ad-supported network, we are always looking for new partners with products and services that will benefit our qualified audience. Are you ready to grow your business? Reach out to advertise@twit.tv and launch your campaign now. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, coming to you from the beautiful Twit Studios in beautiful East Side Petaluma, sponsored by ACI Learning. Hello, everybody. Leo Laporte here, joining us now from left to right, my left, your right, Mr. Alex Lindsay, officehours.global and o9.media. Hello, Alex.
How's it going?
I asked Alex last night, I texted him, I said, let's do a Midjourney demo because you're doing these cool images, and we were all set to do it. And then what happened? It went down.
The slash went down. So the
Discord's still there.
The Discord's there, but it said Discord has this status update. So it'll always, the Midjourney Discord server always has a status update, and it'll just tell you what's going on. And so I went to it really quickly, and it just said we're having an incident, and we will not be able to. The slashes will not work until the incident has been resolved.
I do note that they're actually having an event right now called Painting with Peter Moorbacher. That must be kind of unfortunate for Peter. 1,200 people there. There's a lot of people. So the way Midjourney works is very kind of interesting. Is it uses Discord. You don't have it running on your system. They run a server, and it's free for the first few images, and then you have to start paying for it. But you pay for it. Do you pay for the full version or 200 images a month?
I pay for the pro version.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So I otherwise it was adding up. Like I was using it too much, and so I paid $48 for the year. So whatever.
Oh, that's not
$48 a month. $48 a month. For the year.
A month. Wow.
Yeah, so I paid $500 and some dollars,
Holy
and then
cow.
I just have it for a year. But now I have 30 hours of server time, and I can do it privately. The way I was using it, it was $50. I was going month to month doing. I want to the standard or whatever, which is $30 or $30 a month, and then I want to pay another $20 a month to keep it private because I don't want to, just don't want to put it all.
Yeah, I would pay for that because the only thing I don't like is you do your slash prompt, and then everybody can see what you got.
But you can pay $20 to not have that be the case. So now I'm paying $50 a month, and then I looked at the Pro, and it was $60 a month. But if I paid for a year, it was $48, and I was like, well, I can pay less than I'm paying now if I pay it all at one time. I don't think Midjourney's going anywhere, so I felt like it was a safe.
Maybe it did
investment.
Go somewhere, though. We don't know yet. Anyway, exactly. We'll do it at a later date, although I think we're going to try to get Alex to do it for our Ask the Tech Guys show on Sunday, because I think that would be kind of cool for the audience there. Andy Anako here from GBH in Baston. Hello, Andrew.
Hello. Hello, Leo. I'm so glad to be doing like a show or like a category where I don't have to talk about massive layoffs. It's such a fun
actually,
space
there's an
for me to be
interesting
in right
angle
now.
on that. We'll talk about it. We were talking on Sunday about why Apple hasn't had massive layoffs. We'll get to that in a moment. But first, I should introduce Jason Snell, 6colors.com.
Hello.
The incomparable Jason Snell. Hello.
It's good to see you. I'm relieved to be here. This is like the end of a long journey of having received a MacBook Pro last week and having this whole thing stretch out of work all weekend and write your review and then Monday and post the review and do a podcast. And then Tuesday, I'm crossing the finish line now to be here. And this is like my last download of me and this giant laptop that I have.
So let's talk about it. Since you got it and review it, here's your video, M2 MacBook Pro and Mac Mini Q&A that you did with Dan. So you got both of them.
Yeah, Dan got the Mac Mini and I got the MacBook Pro, and we reviewed them. And then, we did a little live video yesterday, among the many things going on. And then we wrote, as we do, we wrote words and put them on the internet.
There's way too much stuff to talk about today because Apple also updated iOS and Mac OS to add security key capability. We're going to talk about that a little later. But let's talk about let's start with the MacBook Pro. That's the one you have. Tell us about the one that you got. Is it the 14 or the 16?
I have the 16 here. Apple decided, knowing that I like small laptops, to pull a prank on me and send me the largest laptop that they could make. Which is fine. I mean, what the truth is, if you know what the M1 MacBook Pros were like, these are those. Like, externally, you couldn't tell the difference between them. It really is it's our first Apple Silicon, boring speed bump release, right? Where these, and not that they're bad, they're remarkable computers. They're just not particularly new. They're just what you expect from last year or from 2 years ago, I guess, except faster. So they really the story is that it's the M2 Pro chip and the M2 Max chip. And therefore, you get more speed, and there's some more features, and there's a higher RAM capacity, and there's more memory bandwidth, and all of the stuff on the inside. But in terms of like how it looks on the outside, and the fact that it's got that beautiful screen and all those ports and support for many external displays, all that stuff is the same more or less. There's a little bit like the HDMI port is 2.1 and is much more capable. But mostly, and it goes up to 96 gigs of RAM now. So if you want to max this out, if you're Alex Lindsay and you want all those GPUs, those 30-odd GPUs and 96 gigs of RAM and whatever else, you can do that on either model, 14 or the 16. But it's an incremental improvement like Apple does when they're not always doing big leaps. They often are just doing that year by year incremental improvement thing. And that's what these are. So
here's your graphs. You have single core Geekbench, you have multi-core Geekbench, and you have Geekbench GPU plus an Xcode and Final Cut benchmarks. It's better in every regard, right? I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the M2 over M1 just in general, every core is about 16% faster.
Yeah.
So you get that 1900 Geekbench over 1700 Geekbench, because every M2 is on every computer is an M2. Every M1 is an M1. Like the speed of these, no matter what computer it is, it basically doesn't vary. They're all about the same. But this one has lots of cores, right? It's got 8 performance cores instead of the 4 that are in the base M2. And it's got lots of GPUs.
On the multi-core benchmark, it really is considerably better even than the M2 MacBook Air. And
because you've got faster cores and there are more of them because it's 4. Also, interesting decision that they made here to do the 4 efficiency cores, which means that there's always, that's how they get the great battery life. I mean, I killed the battery in 2.5 hours, but that's because I maxed out the CPU cores. Nobody would actually ever do that
so before
for 2.5
they
hours straight.
So before they had 2 efficiency cores.
And so these efficiency cores,
performance.
and exactly right.
Okay.
So 4 efficiency cores basically means if you're just sitting at your computer not rendering anything and just sort of thinking, right, like all the background tasks that happen or very simple tasks, things that are fairly lightweight, it's using these low power processors to do that, processor cores. And it's only when you really stress test the thing that it spins up the performance cores. Performance cores are where we get all of these benchmark results, right? They're the ones that say how fast it is. But the truth is, most of the time, you're not using them. And with 2, if you did a little bit, it would have to kick one of those power hungry things into gear in order to fulfill your need. But with 4, it's even less that you're going to kick into the performance cores, and that all goes down to battery life, which matters so much if you're using one of these laptops not plugged in, and that's how they get those amazing, they quote 22 hours on the 16-inch model of watching a video, which is an artificial test, but they're all artificial. But it's a huge battery and a chip that really is good at saving battery. And so as a result, the battery life on these things is going to be remarkable.
So that's an important point. I mean, if you're looking at raw benchmark scores, that's one thing. But the fact that they've doubled the number of efficiency cores in the M2, for most people in most use cases, except for those high performance cases, that's probably a good thing. Obviously, that's what Apple decided. So we should improve efficiency. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have heard some say that the M2 is really just an interim, a stopgap between the M1 and the M3, which will be a 3 nanometer process, we think, the TSMC 3 nanometer process. And that's where the speed jump is going to be more notable.
It could be that this is just a small step, and then there's also some speculation, and I am one of the lead speculators, I guess, that they're going to actually leap over the A16 chip that they introduced in last fall, which was not a 3 nanometer chip, right? It was a they called it 4, but it's really the new 5 nanometer process, and when the M series is coming out every year and a half, and the A series is coming out every year, it kind of makes you assume that they're going to leap forward at some point, and so it may be that the M3 is using their brand new, late 2023 cores, and who knows what they'll choose to do there. But I think that I don't think that we're ever going to see that Intel to M1 quantum leap anymore. It's still going to be incremental, but Apple does like throwing in new ingredients from time to time, where you get a big, like there's a new neural engine or there's a new GPU core or something like that. Those things happen too. But this is nothing dramatic like that. It's really just, it's very much like an iPhone update. You know how we do the iPhone updates every year and it's like, oh, it's 12% faster or it's 18% faster. That's basically what this is. It's going from the previous year's iPhone cores to this year's iPhone cores is basically what's happening here.
Did Dan?
For Apple is
Go ahead. Go ahead. No,
Yeah,
actually,
just
Alex, I want you to get in here because this is more for you than anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's going to be really interesting. I think that the fact that Apple can control their destiny at this point with their chip is a big deal. Like before, they've been dependent on the GPUs and the CPUs before, and we've talked about this in the past, have really been something they can't control the speed. They can't control those. And a lot of times that speed is lagged behind, where they want it to be. And they had to just kind of tap dance with the software and try to make things more efficient. And they weren't able to build that. So I think that we're going to see that. I also think a lot of the speed upgrades are going to come from developers really following, not really taking full advantage of the chips and taking full advantage of the architectures that Apple gives them. And so we're going to keep on seeing big speed bumps. We're seeing things where, hey, we released a new product and it's 6 times faster. What that meant was not that Apple went 6 times faster. It's they started looking at the code and figuring out what is slowing this down. And if we can figure out how to do it inside of that Apple ecosystem, we can get a lot more performance. Again, that doesn't affect text products or it doesn't affect electron style products. But when you're talking about in my world, when you're talking about 3D and video and audio, being able to do that is going to be a big deal. And I still think that not only are they going to have a really good process, but they're going to have a lot of processors for the Mac Pro whenever it comes out. So we are a little delayed right now, but I think that I think it's going to. Well,
that was actually, I'm not sure if that's true because didn't Gurman say we're not going to see an Ultra, M2 Ultra, or do you think that'll be what we'll see?
No, the Ultra is the only thing we're going to see. What he said is we're not going to see that quad, which is like the dual
whatever's
Ultra,
above Ultra,
Extreme.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. But the Ultra, which was introduced in the Mac Studio last year as an M1, is supposedly the basis of the Mac Pro. It's unclear whether the Mac Studio will get a revision as well, but it sounds like that Ultra chip is going to be what's in the Mac Pro.
Okay. Did Dan like the Mini? What did he have to say about that? That seems to me actually in some ways more interesting since it is redesigned.
Yeah, and Dan, I talked to Apple and we were like, who's going to review what? And I was like, well, if you got a Mac Mini, Dan should review it because Dan's been in the market for a Mac Mini. He's really been wanting to look at those.
We don't generous fella.
We don't get to keep him, but he has a vested interest in this and has been thinking about it a lot. I think what's interesting, first off, is that it's not one Mac Mini, right? It's two. It's the M2 and the M2 Pro. And the M2 Pro is interesting because it's the first time we've seen that Pro level chip on the desktop. Apple's done it in laptops before, but on the desktop, you either had the Max and Ultra on the Mac Studio, or you had the M1 base chip on the iMac and the Mac Mini. And so with this new Mac Mini, you get the M2 base level if you want it, and that's the one that's $599, which is actually a pretty great price. But for, I think it starts $1299, you get that M2 Pro chip, and now you're really, I mean, that's a very impressive system. Like that for anybody who's like, I need a little bit more than the M2 can offer, the M2 Pro really does open a lot of possibilities on that Mac Mini. So you've essentially got two kinds of Mac Mini now. You've got the kind of base, it's enough performance for me, I don't need more. And then without going up to Mac Studio level, you can get this thing that slides in sort of in between them, which is the M2 Pro Mini.
Yeah, and that's really like when you looked at the Mac Studio, kind of entry level for all intents and purposes, entry level is about $3,000. If you're saying, well, I could spend $2,000 or $2,200 or somewhere in that range, I think that the Mac Mini 2 Pro or M2 Pro is really fits, as Jason said, really, really nicely into that cap.
How many did you buy?
I've only bought one, so I just wanted to see it. Yes. No, I'm waiting on some stuff, and when the money rolls in, I'm gonna buy a bunch
John,
more.
Did we order one? Did we? No, we haven't ordered one yet.
I have.
You want?
It
one?
might show up during the show. Maybe we'll do an unbox. I got the email this morning from Apple that said today is the day, even though so it's supposed to show up today sometime.
Actually, that's why we didn't order one. John's going to the store today because they are in store.
Yeah, I got the base unit that I want to test with Zoom ISO specifically to just see what does 8 outputs look like from that product. So that's why I got the 8, the most basic one I could get, which I was going to buy anyway. So I saved $100 by waiting because it was $699 when it was the M1, and it's $599 with the M2, but $775 after you add the Apple Care and shipping and taxes. So.
I'm actually, I had, of course, in my cart, I had all of the different versions of everything. And I actually even ordered a MacBook Pro, and then I canceled it almost. I ordered it last week on the show. You didn't notice, but I was busily tapping away. And then I canceled it because I'm going to be the one who waits for the M3, I think. I have an M2 MacBook Air. I should be clear. I'm not like... I'm not like an animal, but I don't.
I'm not using an Intel machine.
I'm not using
an
Intel. Lisa did buy, and we'll get in a couple of days. Actually, her I think the 31st, because she did a BTO. Her MacBook Air 14, MacBook Pro 14.
I'm glad Alex mentioned Intel, because I think that that's actually the story here. I know that all of us who are so tied into Apple and tech are like, oh, the Intel transition, it's basically over now, which it is. I mean, other than the Mac Pro, that high-end Mac Mini, they were selling one that was the Intel one from 2018 that kept it in the price list because they knew they needed a model with more ports and more performance, and that's what the M2 Pro model gets them. But like realistically, most of the people who will be buying either this Mac Mini or the MacBook Pro are probably going to be people who, they bought a late model Intel laptop. And even though the M1s looked really good, they're like, yeah, but I just bought this laptop and it's a processor transition. I'm just going to sit it out. I think those people are going to be in the market for that M2 MacBook Pro. I think there are a lot of people like me who've got it like a 2018 Mac Mini who are like, I passed the M1 by, but then I look at this M2 and I'm like, well, maybe this is my update. And I think that's the truth of it, right? Sorry to be a broken record on this, but like we all get focused on like this year versus last year. But the truth is so many people out there are holding on to a late model Intel MacBook Pro that they spent a lot of money on. Yes. And it's only now that I think we're getting to the point where they're going to start looking at this and saying, well, it's not the first generation of the chip transition and things seem to have been smooth. And now they've spent that time, amortizing the cost of that Intel laptop. And now maybe they'll make the jump. And because if you're on an M1, like, yeah, it's incrementally faster. But unless you will pay, any price for any performance boost, your M1 MacBook Pro is going to be great. So really, it's the people coming from Intel.
Intel,
Yeah,
we should say
the-
Intel
the-
Max, not Intel
Intel
PCs.
Max, yes.
Yeah, because
Yes, they can come too. They're welcome.
they're welcome, but
Come on over.
a lot of them say,
Come on
well,
over.
I'm not giving up my Intel PC because there are faster chips on in the Intel side. Plus, I love Windows,
Not from Intel, but ironically. But yes, indeed. No, I'm saying, yeah, if you've got an Intel MacBook Pro or an Intel Mac Mini or honestly an iMac, right, where you might look at the studio display or another third-party display and a Mac Mini and say maybe that's my replacement. I think those are going to be big markets for these products more than it is that incremental M1 to M2 person.
That's
Well,
the excuse I gave last week for why Apple's weird comparisons during the video were all to previous, like 3-year-old Intel Macs as opposed to the M1. And then there are many who said, well, that's also because it's the M1 comparison is such a small speed bump. They didn't really want to emphasize
I mean, both are true.
that. I think they're both true. Yeah.
And rubbing it in though to the people who still have an Intel machine, like going, it's a lot faster than what you had now. You know, we just like to remind you that this is the time to move forward.
Well, Apple would Microsoft did this too. They really would like you to be on a modern version of their hardware and software because they want to continue developing there, and they don't want to put more time into Intel.
I have a 2012 Mac Mini that I'm still using. so like below my M1 Mac Mini, and so the thing is the great thing about these boxes is there's always things to do with them, and if you're not using them, like I just use them for what they're good for. I never bought it expecting it to run DaVinci, Resolve or Cinema 4D, so it's not that big of a deal, and so these things, depends on what you're doing, like the fact that you need to switch from your current Mac Mini or iMac or whatever to something bigger only if you're doing something that will matter. I will say some of the operating system stuff works better as well. But the thing is I still think that when people think about these, I mean, my wife has a bunch of laptops and I have a Mac Studio and a bunch of Mac Minis. And when I go over to her desk, I'm always like, to help her with something, I'm like, all this screen and this thing. And like, this is such a clutter. Like, unless you're going to go somewhere, if you're going to leave the house, I always feel like, I'm not a couch person either. I do not like sitting on my laptop with my couch on a couch. And so I like having it there. But I think that people should really look at these Mac Minis really seriously about like, how much do you really need or want to be going somewhere with it? And even with my studio, I put it in a case and take it to the office. Like I'm not.
Well, I think that maybe is a good argument for having a MacBook Air and a Mac Mini. I at home, I have a Mac Studio desktop. I spend a lot more time on my portable. You're a different user, honestly, and Alex. I don't sit down at my desk all that often. I have a very nice Mac Studio there, and it's very fast. But I always have my Air with me, because I'm going around the house.
I do that. I use my iPad for that, or my phone mostly to do that. And I have to admit, I do it because I don't want to work all the time. When I walk out of my office, I just want it to be like.
See, to me, computing is a hobby. My work is talking.
Right.
So
it's a hobby,
I don't want to talk when
office.
I get home, but I do want to compute. I do want to.
Well, I can always walk into my office and do it, but I spend a lot of time in my office, so it fills up the time.
Yeah. That's actually one of the questions you answer in your review, Jason, is if you have a MacBook Air, even the M1 MacBook Air, should you really consider one of these new MacBook Pros?
I mean, MacBook Air, I think that there is an argument to be made. I'm a big fan of the MacBook Air that most people don't need a MacBook Pro, right? Like
it's enough for most people.
The M2 Air and even the M1 Air are so powerful that you will never. I have this thing where I have friends of mine who are buying like a new laptop for their kid who's off at college or whatever, and they ask Jason about it, right? And they're like worried. I realize that how history kind of sticks with people who are not super technical. They're worried that if they buy the low end, the cheapest model, that it's not going to be able to do the job, that it's very rapidly going to get slow and be unreliable and not be able to do whatever their kid is going to want to do with it. And, there was a time when that was true, but this, an M1 or M2 MacBook Air, it's literally going to do, unless your kid is doing like 3D modeling or something. Like it is more than 99% of the people need. So the reason you buy a MacBook Pro might be because you're a pro level user and you need lots of RAM or you need lots of GPU. That's absolutely true. But I think the primary reason you buy a MacBook Pro is you want the bigger screen. It's a big, beautiful screen. It's the best display that Apple has ever made for a Mac. It is the same one that was in the last generation, but it's HDR because it's got the mini LED backlighting. It's got all those ports, so it supports multiple displays. If you want to dock to 2 monitors on your desktop, guess what? MacBook Air can't do that, but the MacBook Pro can. It's got the SD card reader. It's got lots of other features other than that it's really, really fast. And I think that for a lot of people, that's the reason they get the MacBook Pro is because they want that big, beautiful screen, big, better battery, and all of those ports with all that flexibility.
Yeah. So I will sit my
exactly
M2 MacBook Air next to Lisa's brand new MacBook Pro when it comes 14-inch, and I'll do a head-to-head comparison. Maybe it will wow me. But I think for most of us, I would counsel patience. I think the M3, I mean, there's new screen technologies out there. There are rumors Apple might be looking at OLED. It just might be worth holding off if you have patience, if you can be patient.
Yeah, you always buy the computer right before you need it. That's always the best thing, is to hold out as long as you can. I think that the next natural place to buy it would be middle of June. That's usually if you were going to buy something, if you think you can wait, if you can't wait, just buy what you need. But if you can wait, usually the next time we see new machines would be sometime before the middle of June. Then the chances of seeing something again probably wouldn't be until November. So those are the drops are sometime in the spring, or then everything slows down and then there's an iPhone announcement, and then you potentially see something at the end of the year.
We're probably a year off from an M3. I mean, almost certainly at least a year off from an M3.
Right. Yeah, Mark Gurman says late this year, and I just kind of don't believe it. I think that Apple has seen enough of a delay in everything that they've been doing lately that the M3 feels more like a year from now than it does this fall. It would also mean potentially that they were rolling out Mac processors based on the iPhone processor at the same time as the iPhone processor, which, they really haven't done that yet. And I don't know if they've got the chip design and chip fabbing bandwidth to fab a whole bunch of iPhone processors at the same time they're going to build a next generation Mac processor. I don't know. That's why I wonder if M3 is really more a 2024 kind of story.
Yeah. I'm willing to wait till even June 2024. And I think that'll give them time to do a redesign. There might be a newer screen, a better screen. I think there will be a better screen.
I think if you have any kind of M1 or M2 that's solid, that you already bought, that's solidly, I would definitely wait until summer of 2024 before I upgrade it again. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I didn't even want to get the M2, but I spilled coffee into my M1, and
oh well.
These things happen. I got Apple Care Plus this time, or whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah. The guy looked at me and said,
actually,
you don't want to repair this. This is going to cost you more than a new one. Andy?
No, I'm just going to say that's one reason why you shouldn't get yourself locked into one form factor, thinking that I've always bought desktops. Why am I considering buying a laptop? Well, for the reasons that you explained, that oftentimes you get more use out of it because you don't think that the only reason why you don't use a Mac outside of your office is because you can't. But the other reason is, but it also works the same way in reverse, where if you can only afford one computer and you really know what your uses are, absolutely a laptop is the best bang for the buck, but you can save a lot of money and maybe get a lot more longevity by getting a desktop, simply for the reasons that you also mentioned, which is that a desktop, it's safe. Unless it gets stolen, it's on your desk. You have to really put your shoulder into it in order to spill a beverage and take out a desktop. And so I think that's the reason why, that plus the fact that there's no mechanical key switches that I'm dealing with. I'm not plugging things into it and out of it all the time. That's why I will get 10 years out of a Mac Mini and it will still be working like a top by the time I'm ready to retire it. And for that reason, I'm not going to retire it.
Yeah. And I speak as when I say I'm not using a laptop, I use a laptop 80 to 90% of the time for 30 years. It's not like I didn't ever do it. I just don't want to do it again. Like I just found during COVID, I was like, I do not want to do this ever again. And I got used to not having that and just decided I wouldn't. So, but I still have, my iPad is what I usually use the most. And I take my iPad and my little Air laptop when I travel, thinking I'm going to use the laptop, and the only thing I use it for is Zoom for office hours. like that's the one thing that I turned it on for, and then I put it away, and I use the iPad the rest of the day.
All right. Of course, immediately after we closed the show yesterday, Apple announced another product. The return of the HomePod.
And notice that they did a video. They released it with a video.
I didn't even watch the video. So the one,
nice. It was actually a lot of. There was
I was
like
so mad
in the video.
It's like, could you not have done this at the same time?
Yeah.
What's the deal with it? Like a 3-hour delay? I don't understand. Anyway, it's a weird thing to re-release. When they discontinued the $299 HomePod, full-size HomePod, the consensus was it's just too expensive, didn't sell well. They put all their efforts into the HomePod Mini, and then lo and behold, all of a sudden, oh yeah, no, we really like the HomePod. We're going to do another one. Or is it the same one? What's going on?
The fact that it's not the same. It's new. I think the innards are based on the HomePod Mini, but it's
yeah, because it has a temperature and humidity sensor.
Yeah, right, and it's using an Apple Watch processor instead of a phone processor. But they decontented it, right? Like car people say, they took some tweeters out of it and all of that. But the price is only $50 down. It's basically
they're making it cheaper in effect.
I think that's the thing is that I think maybe some of the consensus was wrong, that Apple actually is kind of happy with that $50 down price point that they were basically selling the old one at before it went away. There's a lot of speculation because there were a bunch of them that failed, that maybe Apple realized that they needed to redesign it for it to be cheaper for them to make, and that they had this home strategy where they were coming out with the HomePod Mini, which has a Thread radio and has those sensors in it. And so what they really did is just say, let's do an update of this thing so it's presumably cheaper to make and is basically in line technically with the Mini as part of our home strategy. So I think those of us looking at the discontinuation of the HomePod and saying, I think they got it wrong, and they got the price wrong, and it was way too expensive, which is what we all thought, right?
It used to be $400, not $300, right? It was $100.
I think it was $350.
$350.
I think it was $350, and now it's $300.
Okay.
But like, I wonder if that wasn't it, and it was that it was not as reliable, and that it cost Apple too much to make it, and so now it's back. So I guess that $300 price point, because again, it's a good speaker. I assume this new one's going to sound about as good as the existing one, but $600 for a stereo pair is not an impulse buy. It also, though, I got one little Apple marketing theory here, which is, what Apple really likes is you get people in for the $99 HomePod Mini, and then you say, or you could upgrade. Well, and a lot of Apple customers do the upgrade. They pay for that upgrade.
When I bought the HomePod, the first one, and it's probably in use in my house maybe 6 to 8 hours a day. Like it is like it's a workhorse. It sits in the kitchen, and it's used all the time by the whole family for everything from mostly music, but other things. Timers are probably the thing. It's probably used.
Well, that's just like an Amazon Echo or a Google Home device. It's just about timers, right?
So timers, and then
do you listen to music on it?
Oh yeah. I mean, in a kitchen, it's great.
Yeah,
it sounds great in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And we bought 2 minis, and they ended up in like a cupboard somewhere. Like they just didn't. They never. They didn't have enough noise. They didn't have enough to fill the room. They didn't have enough
noise.
Whatever.
They need more noise.
It was more noise.
Clearly,
no, they just didn't. Yeah, they weren't loud enough.
That's true.
They weren't loud enough, and and I had hoped to. I don't understand why the minis don't kind of fit into that kind of Atmos thing where you can put a bunch of speakers around or whatever, but. Evidently, the stereo pairs, at least with the older ones, I was told, are really, really good at Atmos style. Converting the Atmos to something that sounds surround. I haven't tried it. I might.
Ironically, you can't pair the old one with a new one. You got to buy 2 new ones if you want a stereo pair.
Different.
Which is too bad because I have a lot. I have 2. Old ones,
but it kind of died. I mean, I have to admit that I'm in the market for some more of those because the minis did not work for me, and so I was just like, well, that's all the speakers I'm going to have.
We ended up using the minis. I have minis everywhere in the house. I think I bought 6 or 7 or something, so they're everywhere in the house.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also going to be interesting when we see the teardown of this new hardware. That it's one of the things that was notorious about the old HomePod was that you got to rip it apart in order to fix anything. And not that Apple's going to be making anything easier for the user to fix, but they have to fix these things themselves too. So maybe they are trying to, part of the reason why they discontinued it was not because they didn't believe in a more expensive HomePod, but because they belatedly realized that it wasn't not being a runaway hit. They should make some adjustments to how they manufacture this so that they can continue to make this as a profitable item. It's it's not an upgrade for Matter. That would have been a big tip off, but the 16.1, I think they recently did an update to the OS so that all HomePods can use the Matter standard, which is absolutely essential. I did read something about spatial audio, but I'm not familiar enough with the older HomePods to see if that one supported spatial audio as well, if that's also a firmware update. Yeah. When I look at the differences that people are reporting about, I see a lot of cues that this is definitely something that's ready for the next 5 years. And when I refamiliarize myself with the old HomePod, I can see a lot of red flags that I would need to follow up on to see, was this one of the reasons why they thought they'd be able to iterate it faster? They thought they'd be selling better. They thought, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the new one is basically a 2023 adjustment for the global macroeconomic situation. Yeah,
if you have a hardware that's failing under warranty and you have to fix it, I mean, that's painful, right? That you are losing money on those with every time you have to fix it. And I think that some of that was happening. And Andy's absolutely right. I think the irony of a lot of Apple's improvements in terms of repair are people are like, oh, Apple's getting with the program about making their things more repairable. Yeah. And I think we all forget that the largest company that has to repair Apple products is Apple. And when they do it under warranty, they're the ones who have to pay, and it hurts the product's profit margin. So Apple is motivated to make those repairs as cheap and easy as possible too. And yeah, I do wonder if maybe the true story of that original HomePod is more about its high price, low margins, and a product failure that Apple had to keep fixing that made it even less profitable, and that they've redesigned this one. We'll see how it goes.
When you say failure, you're talking physical failure, like a lemon almost. A lot of talk about like a capacitor or something in them that would blow. Oh. And so even after, not necessarily under warranty, I think some of them did blow under warranty. We never had a problem with either of ours.
I haven't had a problem with mine, but I have had friends who have had, and who knows if it's about the power in their houses or if it's about their environment. But I've heard of a lot of people who especially in the last year or so, and keep in mind, this is not that old a product where it's just either dying or becoming completely like unreliable and rebooting and all of that. And it's like, it's not great. You could see why Apple might have said, look, we need to make changes for Matter, and we need to make changes for, on the processor. This is the wrong processor to have in here. It's also maybe possible that they didn't want that iPhone processor that was in that thing to continue to be made, right? They were running out of them, and they're like, can we make this? Yeah. Because now it's using an Apple Watch processor, which they've got probably lots of for cheap. And that makes the product more profitable for them too.
So I guess the only real question is, how does it sound? Has anybody reviewed the sound yet? Are they arriving today?
Some journalists got to go to a room that they couldn't describe and describe what they heard there, which is exactly what they did at WWDC when they launched the original one. I was taken into a room that I couldn't describe. It's so weird, but now they're going to be shipping, and so we'll get some legitimate, honest.
That's the real question. If they can make them for less and make it more capable and Matter and all of that, and it still sounds as good, because that was one thing they really touted on that original HomePod is, we have figured out a way. Yeah. Now, you said there are fewer tweeters?
Yeah, I think there are 3 fewer or something tweeters.
They had a ridiculous number in the original. It was, 9?
Yeah, I get the sense that they asked the designers to tone it down a little this time, right? Like look, we need this to be cheaper. You can't have all those tweeters in there. Make it work. And,
it had a remarkable number of drivers for a device of that size. That's just not done typically. Doesn't make it sound better necessarily, because there are, the limitations of physics of that enclosure and the size overall. But that's good that they had that many drivers. I guess maybe they didn't need them.
Yeah, I think that's right on the point. Audio hardware is famous for doubling the cost of something to make it sound 5% better.
Right.
And so there really is an upper limit to how much you can put into a speaker or anything before it's something that most people are going to appreciate. And given how much money and how much marketing PR they've put into computational audio, they should be saying they shouldn't be saying, "Oh my God, we managed to put 18 more tweeters and something called a twoofer." Which of our own design to capture specific frequencies. They should basically be saying that we have very not necessarily we have very ordinary hardware, but the magic of this audio grapefruit that we're selling you is that we use computing power inside there to understand what environment it's being placed in and to shape the audio to make sure it gives you the optimal placement.
That's something that the HomePod Mini did not do, but the original HomePod did, and supposedly the new one does as well. Yeah. Is that room sensing? It also has 5 horn-loaded beam-forming tweeter arrays, 4 far-field beam-forming microphones, and it supports spatial audio, which is interesting because it's with one speaker you can get spatial audio. I guess you can.
Yeah, because it can calculate those things. Obviously, the spatial audio I think works better with 2. I have talked to some folks that have had both a discrete sound system and the speakers. And they said it was a solid 85-90% of the quality of the discrete
I bought
speakers. It does a pretty good job.
Pretty good ELAC bookshelf speakers for roughly the same price, maybe a little more. And they're legendary for their quality. Andrew Jones designed. He's considered one of the legends in speaker design. So it'd be interesting to compare them, but I don't know if it's worth $600 to compare them. I don't know if I want to buy 2 of them. Of course, I did buy the AirPods Max, which was $550. So maybe I'm stupid enough to buy those. Would you pair? One of the things it'll do is pair with your Apple TV for a home theater experience, right?
Yeah, it'll even do eARC. So theoretically, if you have other things going into the TV, it will go back out to the Apple TV and then wirelessly deliver those to the HomePods.
That's nice.
And I've heard, I think depending on your use case, that can be perfect or it can be bad. I mean, it really depends on sort of if you need ultra low latency for gaming, it's probably not for you. But in terms of like just having it attached to a cable box or something, it's probably okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really something to think about. Part of the value of a lot of these wireless speakers, Apple's, Google's, whatever's, is that when you can buy an inexpensive $99 speaker, and you have, okay, this is my smart speaker, and this is something to give me a little bit of audio in the kitchen, and then you buy another $99 speaker. Now you compare those as stereo, which gives you a much better environment. And then maybe you buy a couple of more, and now you find that instead of having to crank up the audio to really appreciate the music, like in the bedroom or the living room, you can enjoy it at a lower volume and it still sounds much better. So it's a really good investment. If I had $1,000 to spend on speakers starting from zero, I'm not sure that I'd buy a pair of like $800 speakers. I think I would buy as many decent, inexpensive speakers that work with each other as possible.
Interesting. Yeah, so in the bedroom, we have 2 HomePod minis, one on Lisa's side, one on mine, and we listen to music and books, mostly books on there. That seems like that would be a good replacement for those. The cats step on the top all the time, so I have to have them upside down. I don't know.
That's another test. A review of these things should include like here are pictures of a FLIR camera so you see that don't worry, the top of it is not warm enough to attract kitties.
They just put those little spikes up that they do for pigeons. You put them on top.
Put pigeon spikes on the top.
Mat.
It's almost as if the cats know that if they tap it with their paw, it will start blaring music in the middle of the night. It's like maybe they have figured this out.
Passive aggressive cats.
Cats really are. So I have the minis turned upside down, so they can't do that. Now that's not going to ruin the sound of a mini, but I don't want to spend $600 on fancy speakers and turn them upside down and have them not sound good. I guess it would figure out, I'm upside down. And I don't know what to do about it, but I don't know.
I think it's got the bass drivers there though that are in the bass, and they're going to be trying to drive up into the air, and that's not going to be.
I need a kitty solution. If anybody has one, I think that's a good. Maybe we could sell this on Amazon, Alex. It's little kitty spikes that just kind of fit in that circle. But then you might actually hit it, so that's not good.
No, you just have, it's like a little mat before you go to bed. You just throw it on top, and then it'll just be like, oh,
yeah, but that's
We have the Nerf for our cat. We have the Nerf spray gun. You know, like
you got to spray it. But I'm not going to spray the speaker.
What's funny though is that the cat now just knows what the Nerf gun, what the gun looks like, and so anytime you pull it out to discipline the cat for tearing apart the furniture, it just runs away. But if you don't have the gun, you can't say anything. It doesn't care anymore.
If you order it today, it won't even come in time for Valentine's Day. They must be doing quite well pushing these.
Yeah, it was when it first came out. It was like early first week of February, so it's definitely
they're selling.
Or they made 10. We don't know.
It's such a surprise. I mean, I can't think of another time that Apple has discontinued a product and brought it back in essentially the same form. That's just unheard of. It's a very odd thing.
I think they fixed. I think they backed up, and I think they thought they had something people wanted. It was a little too expensive, and it wasn't working. So they just said, "Well, let's not sell any more of these. This is expensive."
Yeah.
And I think
I think that's probably a good indication of how poorly it was selling, that they were easily able to completely run out of stock, that it wasn't worth it to do another production run based if they were thinking about doing it again, doing a revamp in a year or two. So it's like otherwise they would have said, you know what, we'll keep this on the list, and we'll say we'll have one of those little videos that says car customers love the original HomePod and we've made it even better.
All right. So anything else to say about the new?
Kitties, though, I did.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Andy. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying I bookmarked something that I came across last week because I thought it was curious that someone on Reddit had posted about how they saw their cat walked up to the HomePod, meowed at it, and Siri said, "Sure, here is some music for you." And then the cat just perched on the window, all listening to Garbage and Elliott Smith.
I saw that.
Thinking about
I saw that post, and I said, "That's my cat," except for the Elliott Smith part.
But I was wondering, like, how does that go into testing? That saying, A, they have to make sure they reject anything that's not intended to be a command, and B, is it possible that they're thinking, you know what, if a cat wants to meow at a HomePod, and we think that's adorable, we should make that a feature.
We should make it play some Elliott Smith.
Also, is there somebody at Apple Music whose job it is to produce like playlists for cats? If a cat asks for music, here is a playlist to give it.
Apparently, Rosemary Orchard has figured out how to cat-proof her HomePod. She demonstrated it this morning on iOS Today. So I'm just going to have to watch that episode of iOS Today. Scooter X said you can disable the touch on the top. I never even thought of that. Maybe that's all it takes. It's just disabling the touch. I'll get back to you. Let's see. Apple has, according to Gurman, postponed the fancy AR/VR mixed reality glasses and plans instead to ship a cheaper mixed reality headset with a battery pack that goes in your pocket. Is this so? It's interesting because Microsoft fired basically its entire mixed reality teams, all of its teams. Meta seems to be maybe pedaling backwards a little bit on this. Is Apple following suit and backpedaling a little bit on its investment? No.
And I mean, Microsoft basically saying they're not going to build HoloLens hardware when they can just use Meta's hardware instead, right? And Apple's hardware, presumably, which I think is an interesting angle.
That's
and smart.
Yeah.
It's very Microsoft of the Nadella era.
Yeah.
Apple, no, I mean, what's happening here is two things, right? One is they've always had, I think the rumors have been all along that they've got a cheaper version coming, and that's what Mark Gurman's reporting on, is that they are going to have this, like, there's going to be Apple Reality Pro, and then there's going to be Apple Reality 1, and that's going to be the cheaper version that's going to be available in a year after the first version. Makes you wonder if what they're going to say is very much like, well, this version is for explorers and developers, and then but we're believers in this category, and then and soon we'll have something else. Don't ask us what, but something. The losing, pushing back the glasses thing. I don't know, that product. I can't read that as anything other than this technology just doesn't work yet, right? Because you're talking about something you can wear like glasses and overlay information on it and have it be in your field of vision and have it not be cumbersome that you would wear outside and interacting with people in the world. And I think that's the aspirational goal of everybody in the AR, VR field. But I'm not surprised at all that Apple looked at it and said, can we realistically make this product? And said, no, we can't. I don't think the tech exists for it. I think they still have to invent the tech to make it work.
So let me be clear. I'll read what he says because there's some nuance here. They are still planning to release a mixed reality headset, and they're planning to do it this year. Again, rumor only. This is Gurman. But an even more important follow-up product, lightweight augmented reality glasses, has been postponed due to technical challenges. So instead, Apple will follow up with a lower-cost version of the We are thinking, the rumor is $3,500 mixed reality headset for this year. That'll be developer edition or stupid, Apple fan edition. Stupid's the wrong word. Devoted. Sorry. What did I say? Stupid? Devoted Apple fan. Enthusiast edition. Because I'm going to buy one. So, obviously.
It's not instead, right? Like I think the glasses that you wear out that are the AR glasses are out there as a future thing that they want to go to.
They want to do it, but they can't.
But they can't. But this low-end VR product or lower-end VR product is not instead of that, right? Like that's part of their VR product strategy is to follow up their super expensive model that may be coming this year with one that people might actually buy.
And that would be as soon as he says 2024 or 2025.
Right. They soften us up with the $3,000 one so that when they come out with a $1,500 one, we thank them for it.
Right. Oh, well, thank you.
So basically, it's the Lisa edition.
40 years later. Yeah.
What a relief.
Yeah.
And I think that we'll see. They're targeting. The rumor is they're targeting 1 million units. They'll sell at least that. They'll. My guess is they'll probably sell 5 to 10.
Oh, they'll sell out. Yeah, because there's a lot of people like me and you. I wouldn't buy it if I were a private citizen, but I think it's, in order for us to cover this stuff, we've got to kind of keep an eye on it.
I mean, it's hard to overstate how impossible this goal is. I mean, Jason's absolutely right. Like with today's technology, how do you get enough power into the headset to make it work? How do you get displays that are good enough that you're going to be able to tolerate it for more than a couple of hours? How can you make it light enough that people are going to want it to put on their heads? How are you going to have displays that work outside as opposed to inside an office environment? And even when you solve all of those, you're still dealing with what kind of apps, what kind of functions are going to appeal to people that would want to have this helmet or these goggles outside of these few niche areas in which very few companies have had some kind of success. So it's exciting.
Right. I want to take a little break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the new releases, new operating systems for everything, and besides some security fixes stuff, the really important details of this particular release, what it will do. But first, a word from our sponsor. MacBreak Weekly brought to you this week by Melissa, a I'd say the leading provider of global data quality, identity verification, and address management solutions. Today, they just announced, this is exciting, a partnership with TomTom. TomTom, the satellite navigation product. They're going to layer TomTom's comprehensive global address data, location data, and country data on top of Melissa's already industry-leading data quality, enrichment, and identity verification solutions. This is just one more way. Melissa's always doing this. They are improving their products. They've been doing this for so long, since 1985, and every year something new comes along from Melissa that makes it even better. This TomTom partnership is huge. Multi-language, multi-format support, key to postal addressing. Not every country is alike. TomTom ingests country data into one global, and this is important, standardized data set while supporting multiple languages. There's no street addresses in Venice. You just, turn left at the canal and then right and then go down an alley and you'll find it. Well, TomTom actually can ingest that and give you a location They handle those weird nuances country by country, making the Melissa solution stack efficient and seamless and making sure your customer data is actually useful and effective. Melissa has actually used this to increase its global support across 240 countries and territories. We talked to Greg Brown. He's the vice president of global marketing, Melissa. He says, by adding TomTom's rooftop precision capabilities to our solutions, Melissa's customers can rest assured not only is their data clean and verified, but they have pinpoint accurate location information, high value to business operations. This ensures restaurants are found, packages are delivered to the right place, on-demand drivers find their passengers, and so much more. You can see how important global address verification is, location information is. Poor data quality could cost organizations on average $15 million a year, and that's just the first year. The longer it stays in your system, the more your business losses will accumulate. By leveraging TomTom Maps, plus points of interest, plus 7-digit postal codes, plus address points, and their routing API, it's kind of amazing. Melissa provides a best-of-breed address engine critical to business needs worldwide. And what's cool about it is you can get it any way you want it. On-prem, as a SaaS, delivery, they have a secure FTP server you can upload and download to and from, or probably the way most of you will use it, as an API. They have a very nice API, which means you can include this valuable additional information into your app, into your customer service app or your shopping cart. Melissa's been doing this longer than anybody else. Since 1985, they specialize in global intelligence solutions to help organizations unlock accurate data for a more compelling customer view. And it probably goes without saying, but I'm going to say it because it's so important. Melissa treats your data as you would want it to be treated. They undergo continuous independent security audits. They are absolutely committed to data security, privacy, and compliance. They're SOC 2, HIPAA, and GDPR compliant. Your data is in the best possible hands. So many ways to use Melissa. I want you to check it out. Get started today if you want to play with the API with 1,000 records cleaned for free. Melissa.com/twit. MELISSA.com/twit. I'm so happy we've partnered with them for several years now. It's so cool because they have become, even in the short time we've been working with them, I think it's 3 years, better and better and better and better. Melissa.com/twit. We're so glad they support us here at Twit. We're glad you support us at Twit by using that address. Melissa.com/twit. Thank you, Melissa. So, iOS 16.3, Ventura, what is it? I don't even know. 11, I don't know what it is. It's
13.
You don't know either, do you?
1, 2? I don't know. Which one are you talking about?
It's all new, baby. It's all new. In fact, even if you have older versions of, it's macOS Ventura 13.2, but older versions are getting updated of iOS and macOS. iPadOS is also updated to 16.3. According to Apple's website, these are fixing security exploits, including patches in Apple mobile file integrity, image I/O, kernel, mail, maps, Safari, and WebKit. Whoa. For instance, there's 9to5Mac found a exploit in the weather app that could allow other apps to bypass privacy preferences. Another exploit in WebKit, which is, of course, what Safari and all browsers use on iOS. 2 exploits that could lead to, and this is bad, arbitrary execution of malicious code. But the biggest thing I think end users will notice is support for security keys. This is very interesting. You can now use your YubiKey, for instance, to log into your iOS or Mac device, or to provide two-factor. Instead of the 6-digit code that Apple pushes, you could use a key to do that. Apple has a post about this, about how to use it. It's probably worth reading if you're interested in doing that. It's HT213154. Hut! And they talk about which security keys they support and all of that. So I like this. I mean, I use YubiKey for two-factor on my password manager and a few other things. I think this is an interesting thing. Will any of you use that instead of the normal?
I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I think for you especially, Alex. Yeah.
Yeah.
They require that you have two.
Yeah,
two
we're not
keys.
high value targets.
Right. But Alex, yeah,
Alex is definitely,
He's
he's in their crosshairs.
You do have to have at least 2 FIDO certified security keys. YubiKey has a couple that work with any device, iOS or Mac OS. You'll have to have two-factor setup, of course, already. You'll need a browser that supports security sign-in. But here's something you should keep in mind. It won't work with older machines. So if you can't get your machine up to Mac OS 13.2 or iOS 16.3 or iPadOS 16.3, you won't be able to use your key. So I don't know what the fallback is. That's an issue. You can't sign into iCloud for Windows either. Child accounts and managed IDs are not supported. And Apple Watches won't work if you haven't paired them with your phone. You have to pair them with your phone, not a family member's iPhone. So if you're using it for your kids or a senior in your family or something like that, you have to redo it.
This is the same story as Apple's end-to-end encryption, right? It's the end-to-end encryption. It's like this is a brand new security regime, basically. So you need all devices who support it. And so, you know, if you're going to support this, you've got to upgrade everything. You have to do that or it won't work.
Yeah, because if you have a fallback, if, for instance, they have a fallback and say, no, don't worry, if you don't have your key, we'll text you. Then that's the lowest
security hole.
That's the security. Right. That's the lowest. Whatever the worst security is, that's the one you got to watch out for. Even if you, well, no, but I need a key. No, you don't. You just need a text, which we can snarf. So I presume Apple doing it right is going to make it pretty hard. There. I mean, do they have a button that says "Lost my YubiKey"? I'm so scared about doing this that I don't. It's just like advanced data protection, isn't it? It's like, I don't know. I don't want to get locked out of stuff.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is, this is an important new feature for the credibility of the entire platform. And I know they've been around for close to 40 years, but still there are no-go points for certifying certain pieces of hardware for certain applications. So it's good to have this hardware key support. For most people, it's actually kind of important to have to be able to say, "Hi, Apple. Yeah, you know what I did? I did this stupid thing. I forgot this thing. Could you please give me access back to all my information?" So yeah, don't do this because it's cool to have a key on your fob that makes you feel like a super secret agent. Because at some point you're going to say, if I weren't so worried about North Korean hackers busting in and finding out what my high scores are on all my games, I would not have to basically be reconstructing all of my playlists and all my photos and everything right now.
Yeah, I think it's actually using a similar philosophy in another way to the end-to-end encryption stuff, which is it requires you to create 2 keys. So it's basically saying you can have a YubiKey. You need to add another key. So the idea there is that you're not. They don't want. You've got to have 2 baskets for your eggs. Basically, is
you
the
can have 2
here, right?
YubiKeys. You don't have to have 2 separate. Google did this too when they did the advanced protection, and the reason is if you lose your YubiKey, you're SOL. So the thought is that you In fact, I often register 3 or 4 YubiKeys. Carry one on my keychain as I do here, and then put the other ones in a safe in case you lose this one, because otherwise, you're locked out.
Yeah. So Apple's good in saying you got to have at least 2.
Yeah.
At least 2.
Yeah.
Also, you always have to keep in mind, especially if you're an organization, what if only one person has access to this important part of your business or your nonprofit or whatever, and that person gets hit by a bus? You have to make sure that there's an outside way of getting into this data, or else you're absolutely hosed. There's absolutely nothing Apple can do for you right now.
Although, if you think about it, a key is maybe a better way to do it than something that might be locked up on my iPhone. If I have a key and I put it in a safe or a safety deposit box or somewhere, and I tell my wife that's the other key, and something happens to me, that actually could be easier for her than trying to figure out how to get into my phone so that she can do the authorization, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's probably a good thing. But again, you need multiple keys. I presume Apple supports more than 2. I haven't tried it. A lot of, Bitwarden, when you can register as a number of keys, you can name them. You could say that's the one in the safe. That's the one on my keychain. That's probably the right way to do it. I would imagine Apple's doing it right. The press release came out today. It says Apple builds on privacy commitment by unveiling new education and awareness efforts on Data Privacy Day. Happy DPD. That's pretty darn exciting.
So that's why that's why all those fireworks last night keep the dogs sealed.
We're all celebrating.
Saturday.
Yeah.
It's Saturday is actually Data Privacy Day, but why not make it a whole week? Apple decided that it's a whole week.
You get the Monday off, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I thought it was today. All right, it's the whole week. In any event, they're going to have, starting Saturday, they're going to have a new Today at Apple session, taking charge of your privacy on iPhone, which I think is great. And they will talk about mail privacy protection, safety check location services, and passkeys. I think that is really good.
Yeah, and it's a personal service right at the Apple Store, so they will actually look at your phone and say you could turn this on.
Oh,
you
nice.
Could this is what will happen, and they can walk people through that stuff.
Great. I think that's great. So there's also a website for this, which is apple.co/ what was it? I put it away before I skills-privacy. You can register it at skills- I have to go to Pleasanton. Wait a minute. Let me get.
Well,
let me
just wait.
Store.
They'll load in Corte Madera before too long. Don't worry.
That's where I want to go. I want to meet you at the Corte Madera store. There it is.
Yeah, we can learn together.
Let's learn together. Apply. Okay, skills. So they're doing it Sunday. Oh, I'm working, man.
Yeah, that's the day after World Privacy Day. Come on,
man. Oh, there's one the next Sunday. Well, heck.
Yeah, I read that it's an addition to the regular courseware available at Apple Store, so it should be like a regular class you can sign for.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. Encourage all your family and friends. Take advantage of it. They're free. Obviously, you have to reserve a place, but that's really a great thing. I'm really glad.
And if you can't get to the Apple Store, you can learn about those features from the somewhat funny, somewhat awkward comedy / informational / infomercial video that they made with Nick Mohammed from Ted Lasso they also posted today. And it's basically like a film you show in class at school where they try to make it entertaining, but the subject matter is so dry that you can feel everybody straining to make it entertaining. And they sort of have a meta level where they know that you know that they know that you know that it's not. But it's what I like about it is that, people don't understand this stuff, and it does try to explain it. It is obviously puffing up Apple's credentials about security and privacy here, but it's better than nothing if you can't get to an Apple Store for the one-to-one.
Let's just watch a little bit. For those of you on YouTube, you're going to see a slideshow so that Apple doesn't know we're doing this. But for those, our alarm clock, I'll narrate it. No, turn on the sound. Come on. This is just, look it. Let me stop right here. Hold on. Let me explain this. If we put this on YouTube, we'll get taken down.
Audio too.
Right. Yeah. But don't edit it now. Do it live and edit it. You're going to, when you edit the show, do the slideshow and take the sound out, because the podcast people are not affected by what YouTube does, right?
The podcast will not be affected. It's just
that's why I put the sound on now. Because 95% of our audience doesn't watch it on YouTube. So we're just going to make those poor 5% of the audience have to watch a slideshow with no audio. I've seen enough. That's not worth getting taken down from YouTube for.
Getting a lot of Ricky Gervais vibes out of that performance, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically the premise, is that he's kind of like he's very defensive and trying to make himself seem more of a star than he is, and then being taught these things about privacy. And like I said, it's kind of funny, but also very much like in that school informational video where. Yeah. We'll throw in some jokes, but we're really trying to get you to eat your vegetables here.
It's inevitable that it be a little bit like that, because it is that way. It is vegetables.
I like that they made the effort here, right? That they actually are trying to get this stuff across, because it is so, like, we've all tried to explain this to our less technical friends and family members, and it's kind of hard, right? Like, to be like, what are these features, and why do you want them, and why do you care about them, and why do they matter? And yes, it is also very much in an ad. Basically, it is self-serving in the sense that this is Apple's whole privacy.iPhone ad campaign. This is essentially an extension of that.
Right. So it's 5 minutes. I haven't watched it, but it contains all you would need to know to implement this stuff, or is it just?
It shows the screens and where the switches are and what they mean and sort of basic concepts. Yeah,
it's cool that they got. I wish they'd gotten Hannah instead to do it. That'd been more interesting. Or who's
Nick Mohammed was available.
Nick was available. He wasn't working at the moment. He had some time. But that's fun. If you're a Ted Lasso fan, that's kind of fun, right? He's a good character in that show.
Well,
Nick Mohammed's actually a very talented comedic actor who's been in a bunch of stuff in Britain.
Okay.
And yeah.
All right,
yeah.
cool. So he has
and I think also that it continues the narrative that Apple just keeps beating down of how much you're being tracked around. So in addition to teaching you some things, it's also just continuing the stoking of the paranoia that might be healthy to understand how much you're being tracked, and I think that of course undermines a lot of other things around Apple. So.
Right. Good. Well, I'm glad Apple's doing it anyway, and I'm really glad that they added the keys. I mean, this seems to be more than lip service. They're really walking the walk. Right.
Again, they're slowly tightening a noose.
Yeah.
Like I think that they're not doing everything all at one time. I think that they just keep on pulling these things in, because if they did them all at one time, people would freak out and there'd be a bunch of people that are upset, and they're just slowly pulling all these privacy things, just tucking them in one step at a time.
I'm a little surprised that they haven't gotten more government pushback. Maybe they are behind the scenes.
Oh, I think they are.
Yeah.
You notice that no one ever complained that they couldn't get into somebody's BlackBerry, like even though that was what everybody used for that.
Right.
It's odd, that wasn't. But they still are. But I think that the government has kind of lost They have a way to get in right now for a lot of the phones that are out there, and so they're complaining a little bit less. But Apple's gonna keep on tightening. But I think that that's also where we saw a lot of the child pornography issues that Apple did. As they keep on tightening this up, they're also trying to close the loopholes or the gaps that the government uses to try to open it back up again.
Yeah. So, Andy, you said you were glad to be on a show where you didn't have to talk about tech layoffs. Apple seems to be the only company in Silicon Valley that is not laying people off. Wall Street Journal had an article about why that is. And actually, if you compare Apple's hiring over the last couple of years to all of these other companies, the other companies went crazy hiring. How has Apple so far avoided layoffs? Wall Street Journal says lean hiring and no free lunches. They charge, don't they? They charge for lunch.
The free lunching. They do charge for the lunch, but I think that I think the free lunch thing was a little absurd. Like the amount of cost per employee is so low, that was a kind of.
Although that's one of the first things Elon got rid of at Twitter. So I think this is really what it's all about. From its fiscal year end in September 2019 to 2022, Apple's workforce grew 20%. 164,000 full-time employees, 65,000 of them in retail, I might add. Over the same period, employee count at Amazon doubled, Microsoft up 53%, Google up 57%, Facebook 94%. So, of course, it makes sense. When you double your employee count in a year, it makes sense that you're maybe going to have to fire some people at some point.
Yeah, at last week's open town hall meeting, Sundar Pichai, like the day after they fired 12% of their workforce, his explanation was basically that they made some hiring decisions about a year and a half ago based on hoping based on the idea that certain trends would continue and they'd be in a good position to capitalize on it. And as he said at the meeting, that obviously the economy changed and the good times they were counting on did not actually happen. So we've spoken a lot before about how odd sometimes it is that we hear that Apple, the reason why we're not going to be expecting a whole lot of updates to iPad OS or Mac OS this year because they've pulled engineers off of those projects to put them onto other projects, and why don't they just hire more staff so that they don't have to pull people off of projects and slow other things down? Well, now we see philosophically why that is. It's better. It's nasty to be a little bit stretched out as an engineer. But I suppose that if you compare that to having a little bit more of job security, that they're not over hiring for what they need, and they maybe not going to have to cut 10% of their workforce back. Maybe that will help make them feel a bit better about having to suddenly develop operating system software for virtual reality glasses instead of working on this feature for the Mac OS they've been thinking about for the past 3 years.
I think Apple's also probably resistant to culture change or culture, disintegration. So I don't think they want to add that many people that fast, because it's just really hard to keep what you do the way you do it. It's hard to maintain control of that when you double the size or you increase by 50%. I think that 20% was probably the outer edge of what Apple was willing to do, because they want a certain number of people there for a certain amount of time so they can kind of, assimilate them.
It's also
into how they do it.
As the journal points out, that Apple's business maybe is somewhat more resilient to downturns than these other advertising-focused businesses.
There's also a lot less SKUs. I mean, the other organizations have so many products. And when you think of the advertising, all the software development, and all the other things, Apple's producing less different things than everybody else. And generally, they're not cutting them out very often. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel for anybody who's lost their job. In fact, it was a little grim on Twitter over the last few days, reading, the farewells from Google employees, many of whom had been there for more than a decade, 20 years in some cases. You're at a company for 20 years and you're summarily fired. That doesn't look like right sizing. That really looks like, your whole life has been turned upside down. It's not that the people who were just hired are the people who are now being fired. In many cases, it's people who've been there for a lot longer. So my sympathy.
Yeah, that's why there's exactly. Yeah,
you can tell. I've worked in and out, contracted in and out of a lot of companies, and one of the things that's interesting is you can tell the employees that have been through downturns, because they will, the moment you have a meeting with them, they will link you. You'll get hit with LinkedIn. Now, a lot of people do that. It's good practice. Like
they keep their resume up to date. They keep their network fresh. They add people.
Everything's
You're always
they're
looking
adding
for the
people.
next job.
They're sending you things. They're not necessarily, but they keep all those contacts warm. And you can tell that somebody who's kind of been in this industry for a little while and gone up and down.
Yeah.
That they try to keep spreading out, and they're always, funny thing is, they're always doing people favors. Like they're always like, not nothing out of the, that they shouldn't do, but like connecting you with this person and connecting you with that, because what they're doing is they're building that network, with people all around them, and they're constantly, keeping all of that warm. And it took me a little while to understand. I actually was talking to someone at a phone company about that. They were like, "Well, you never know how long you're going to be here."
It's just like strippers, frankly.
I never connected that. It's an interesting
It's
parallel.
in my mind, and I bet you, Andy, you saw it on Reddit too. There was a stripper who posted an Excel spreadsheet and then graphs of her income over several years period, and then answered some questions. She'd apparently been keeping it in a spreadsheet, and she said, really, the minute you get to the club, you've got to cultivate these various customers. The way you get a bigger payday is making friends with them before you get on stage. So it's just like that. You got to build your network.
Yeah. So, but I think I think a lot of people get into this mode of, I'm just working where I'm working. I just want to do my thing, and I don't want to talk to, I don't want to really interact. And that's where that becomes a pretty unstable place to be in a lot of these things, is to do that. And so you do want to be heads down, but you also have to pay attention to the realities of the market. But I do think that Apple I think the last time Apple laid anybody off was in the late 90s. Like that was like the Steve Jobs came in and righted the fire and let off a couple, like 4,000 people. And I don't think they've had any layoff after that. And like but that, I think, and I also think that there is within the management, I think that there's definitely a culture of still being, like, the scars of the late 90s are deep, so deep, and Apple worries about every penny of what they do. And they think about, I know people that have worked there, and they think about 1997 every day.
Yeah. My dad, who passed away about 10 years ago, he grew up in the Depression. And when I was a kid, like we didn't throw anything away. We had like broken like electric razors in the barn that was like, maybe we'll fix it someday. He could make almost anything or fix almost anything with like the wire from a coat hanger. Like that mentality stays with you.
The depression mentality.
If you go through those formative years, and Apple, I'm telling you, Steve Jobs returning to Apple in '97 when they were near death. We talk about the culture he built, right? Because he really rebuilt the Apple culture when he came back there. And that was one of the biggest products he did was Apple culture. So it could outlive him. And one aspect of it that doesn't get talked about enough is this depression, bankruptcy mentality where they are very slow to hire. They are very reluctant to spend money. And you get those moments where you're like, you guys have all the money, spend the money. And they're like, maybe not. You never know. Rainy day, whatever. And it can be good and it can be bad. But in a case where they're so slow and deliberate with their hiring, I think to a fault, it is an advantage in a situation like this where everybody's looking for, demonstrations of responsibility from big corporations. And Apple gets to use a different demonstration that is basically that we hired slow and we didn't overhire, instead of having to throw, some jobs on the fire in order to prove that they're paying attention, which I think a lot of these other companies are doing.
And then Google gets, did you see that letter that was sent out by one of their stockholders?
No.
A very minor investor that was taking credit for you got to make. Oh man, you got to lay people off. You got to do it. You got to do it.
Enough. It was like that was a good start. The 12,000 a good start. I was like, did you actually put that in print? Like, did you did you think that was okay to say? Like that was
hedge fund billionaire Christopher Hone said the decision to cut 12,000 jobs is a step in the right direction, but it does not reverse the headcount growth of 2022. I don't think that's the intention, is to reverse the headcount of growth of 2022. Hone said the management needs to go farther. A lot of investors
out there.
Yeah.
A lot of investors out there who think that they run the companies they've bought shares in, and
I own shares in this. I am an owner.
A lot of them are getting fixated on a very, very simplistic metric, which is how much revenue does this company generate per employee? And they figure that, well, look, if you're not generating as much as X per employee, you have too many employees, easily just fire half your staff and suddenly your revenue per employee will double. And now won't everything be wonderful? And so, it's not something that you take really super seriously when you hear when you hear someone saying you simply have too many people. You have to follow that up with, because why? Right. Like what are the too many people not doing? Are you paying people to do double work? Are you being super inefficient? Or are you just simply saying that if you're not having employees quit after 2.5 years from extreme burnout, then you're not driving them hard enough? I don't think so.
I think that Hone is probably one of the people in a group of financial people who think that Elon Musk did the right thing with Twitter, and this is how every company should be operated, and cut to the bone. Of course, I think it's funny.
Get those nerds out of there.
Get those nerds. What do you need
just
them
eating
for?
Sandwiches and spending
free
money.
Food. Yeah. Hey, Andy and I both have this concern. When Apple bought Prime Phonic, which was a very nice classical music service, they promised that they would bring it to iOS. They killed the service. They did give us refunds for our subscriptions, but still hasn't come back. There was some code in 16.3 mentioning a standalone classical music app, but I was disappointed when 16.3 came out that a new Apple classical music app did not appear on my phone. So, Andy, any thoughts?
I think that we're just looking at Apple's realization that will we get more subscribers by being able to say, hey, here's how wonderful our classical music. I think that they know that if they promote higher quality music files, if they promote spatial audio, not only will they say that, hey, we've got something that Spotify does not have, they will also be able to say, and hey, what a great reason for you to spend $250 for our new headphones as opposed to $80 ones that you've been using right now. So I'm sure we'll see it, but they don't have the resources to simply say, they don't have the resources to simply burst into a room and saying this is ridiculous. We need to get this launched now. It'll happen when it happens.
Well, they did promise it would happen in 2022. Yeah, obviously, we who love classical music are a small minority that don't move the needle. You still get classical music on Apple Music, I know that, but Primephonic was focused on classical and had some really nice features. I kind of wish they just hadn't bought it. If they weren't going to do something with it, I wish they hadn't bought it.
It feels like it's definitely coming. It's just not like it got delayed. I can't imagine that they would buy it and that there's so much evidence that it's about ready to happen and that they would pull the plug on it. It doesn't make sense.
They want to get it right.
And a lot of it. Well, they want to get it right. I think that a lot of it could be licensing as well, because that was a really Primephonic had a really deep catalog. The different which is not to minimize the fact that really classical music is an area where if you were to justify having a separate app with a separate user interface just for this category of music, you could maybe do it, and Primephonic definitely did. Because there's one thing to say, hey, I want to hear Beethoven's Third Symphony. Great, here are 2 copies of it. Hey, aren't we great? We have 2. But then you have people who are into classical music who are like, actually, I want to hear the Leonard Bernstein recording. Or I was just reading an article about how this one conductor I'd never heard of had his own attitude towards it. I want to find I know there's only a 1953 recording that was transcribed off of a radio disc, but I want to hear it anyway. Whereas that's not the sort of depth that Spotify or Apple Music or any other traditional music service. That's not the sort of depth that's going to pay off. Whereas these specific classical service is going to say, no, we are going to make sure we can get the rights to that 1953 transcription disc. We are going to get the rights to these sopranos and tenors from the 20s and 30s whose recordings are garbage, but they're the only surviving recordings of this particular performance.
Yeah.
So it's hard.
Yeah, I have Maria Callas doing, I can't remember which opera, Traviata, I think. And it's not a great recording, but it's Maria Callas. And so you want to hear that, right? HomePod got an update as well, by the way, with 16.3. And they've turned on, we mentioned they have temperature and humidity sensors in the Mini and the new second generation HomePod. They turned it on. I don't know what they're going to do with it.
Yeah. It's going to be great for workflows.
Yeah, for some triggers.
Automation.
Home automation triggers to have those in your various rooms and be able to key off of them. Yeah.
Siri's confirmation tone will now play to indicate when smart home requests are completed for accessories that may not show a visible change or are in a different room. Remastered ambient sounds are more immersive. Okay. And can be added to scenes, automations, and alarms in the Home app. Find My on HomePod now allows you to ask Siri for the location of family and friends if they've shared it with you. I like that. I'll be saying, hey, Shlomo, where's my wife? That's cool. That's kind of cool. We have, in our family, we all agree to keep our location turned on so that we can, make sure everybody's home or not or safe. You can have recurring home automation set up with just your voice. Do you think Siri's going to get smarter? The reason I asked, we were seeing this Cambrian explosion of AI with Midjourney and Stable Diffusion in images, ChatGPT in text. Microsoft has now announced they are, yes, indeed, putting billions of dollars into OpenAI so that they can have some artificial intelligence in Office and other things. I feel like this is kind of but Apple is not. There was a good. I'll point to Ben Thompson, who wrote a very nice piece in Stratechery, which you may have to subscribe to. I do to read, and he talks about AI in the Big Five. How AI, he says, and I think I kind of agree with him, that AI is a new tech epic. The PC, the internet, cloud computing, mobile, all changed everything. And he thinks that's about to happen now with AI. So, and I thought this was really interesting. Ben is a smart fella. He quotes Joel Spolsky, a famous line in his Strategy Letter 5. Smart companies try to commoditize their products' complements, by which he means if you have a watch or a phone, you want to make it all of the things that go on the phone, the apps, for instance, as close to commodity pricing as possible. And Apple has done a very good job with that. In some cases, making it open source is a way to do that. Apple invests in open source technologies, Ben writes, most notably the Darwin kernel and the WebKit browser engine, which fits Spolsky's prescription as ensuring that the web works well with Apple devices. So that makes your Apple devices more valuable. Now, let's talk about AI. Apple's efforts in AI, meanwhile, have been largely proprietary. Traditional machine learning models are used for things like recommendations and photo identification and voice recognition, but nothing that moves the needle for Apple in a business in a major way. But they did receive a gift from Stable Diffusion, and we talked about this when they did it. Apple actually modified Stable Diffusion to work better with Apple Silicon. They optimized Core ML for Stable Diffusion. He points out because Apple controls the hardware, the chips, they could actually, besides doing optimized software for Stable Diffusion, they could tune Apple's chips, the neural engine, to be better at things like Stable Diffusion. He says, it seems likely that Apple chips, if not this year, then probably next year, will be tuned for Stable Diffusion as well as other Apple's own needs. Stable Diffusion itself, meanwhile, could be built into Apple's operating systems. So it's interesting because Apple, which has kept its AI stuff internal and private and not, frankly, done a very good job with Siri, does have an opportunity because they make the silicon to make some of this open source stuff better. You think? What do you think Apple's AI strategy is? Andy?
Well, the rumor is they're spending a lot of money on Siri, whether it's successful or not. And the rumor is that they're dumping a lot of money and a lot of development.
We know Amazon loses $10 billion a year on Echo, on ALEXA. It's easy to lose a lot of money. Sam Altman says that they're spending a ton of money, hundreds of millions of dollars a month on ChatGPT. Andy, go ahead.
I just think the big problem is that no company has positioned a smart speaker, a smart audio, a smart assistant as anything other than here's how to trigger a function, here's how to call for a playlist, here's how to set a timer. There's been so much unexploited potential to really turn this into an augmented reality operating system, where this is an audio interface to an entire operating system. This is an audio interface to apps that we can let people to develop to interact with this audio assistant. It's as sophisticated as the Google Assistant is compared with Siri and others. It's still the sort of thing where ask it to do a canned feature, it will do that canned feature in a very, very humanistic way, as opposed to let me have a conversation with this software to solve a problem or create something that I need created or do something that I need done. And that's because that's the way that we interact with computers. We have a keyboard, we have a mouse, we have a conversation between key presses and mouse clicks about here's something I want to do. You're going to help me do it because you have more resources and you're connected to the internet and I'm not. If Apple were to basically put the words OS at the end of Siri and basically develop it with that kind of an attitude, I think they could make a lot of really big leaps forward in a very short amount of time. And ChatGPT is not the biggest factor here. It really is just that attitude about how are we going to present this thing.
And I think that also some of it is brand risk, for all of the organizations that are involved, all the big organizations. Is being wrong is worse than not saying anything. So, there's the saying that's usually attributed to Lincoln that it's better to keep one's mouth shut and look foolish than to open it and remove all doubt. And the issue is when you open up, like I have ChatGPT opened almost all day. Like it just sits over there and I flail at it, like do this. Let me see what you're going to do here. And it's wrong about 20, 30% of the time. Like it is like patently wrong, like not like a little wrong, but it sounds totally normal. Like it is and so
it's what we call confidently wrong.
It's confidently wrong. And the issue is that if Apple started having some, so ChatGPT can do that because OpenAI is like, hey, we're experimenting, we're having fun, and this is not important. But if you start putting that into a speaker, if it's off 1% of the time, Apple's going to get roasted, and so the need, I think that the issue that Apple has is, and Google and all these and everyone else is we want to make sure that we're carefully certain that we're giving you the right solution before we do it, because we want to be right, and they're giving up the ability to do all the things it could do to be right 99.9999999% of the time. And so almost every response that you get is something someone looked at and said, yeah, that's a good response for that thing. And then if I don't know that, I'm going to tell you I found it on the web. I found this on the web.
In a way, this is this is the innovator's dilemma, though. That, by the way, is how he begins this article. You're doing fine now, but remember, Apple is massively successful in the last decade because of the iPhone. They were right on top of that complete transformation in computing. The new epic. They created it. Exactly right. They created it. And they are desperately with the car and with the AR, VR, and with health, looking for the next thing. What if the next thing's AI? And Ben seems to think it is, and I think he might be right. Is Apple going to be competitive there, or is the innovator's dilemma the unwillingness to risk their core business to get into the new one? Is it going to harm them in the long run?
They've got a bunch of really smart people working on AI and ML stuff at Apple. And I mean, you look at the fact that they've been talking about the neural engine all this time.
Yeah,
right?
They're building it in the hardware,
they have been
for sure.
For years building in machine learning processor cores directly into their hardware, right? So on that level, they're there. But I think the interesting question is where do they take that? And we started this conversation by talking about Siri, and I think that's a great example where Alex is completely right. Imagine the stories that are written if Siri gives a wrong answer to something. That already happens, right? But if it's an AI-driven, confident Siri that's giving completely wrong answers, that's bad. So they have to be careful. At the same time, obviously what they've been doing with Siri for the last 10 years hasn't really worked. And my impression is that in the background, this is absolutely what they're doing with Siri, is they're trying to do a better AI-driven model for Siri that will be more responsive and understand you and maybe even understand the conversation. But the innovator's dilemma is absolutely true, which is they can't launch that until it's actually good. Whereas OpenAI or something can just put out a thing and say, here's a bot we wrote. It makes stuff up, but who cares? And Apple can't do that.
And Apple doesn't want people to, like kids writing their term papers with Siri, that like that kind of thing. And so I think that keeping themselves away from that, especially before this lawsuit that was just filed. I think the big companies want to watch what happens, with the San Francisco lawsuit against against OpenAI and Midjourney and DALL-E, or not Midjourney and Stable Diffusion. And they want to watch that. If the artists that lose that, the gates will be open. There'll be $1 trillion dropped into this because the uncertainty has kept everybody on the sideline. When there's no uncertainty anymore, everyone's going to move really fast. And the thing is, but I think what Apple's doing potentially is doing exactly what was talked about here, which is they don't necessarily want to sell AI, so they're going to make it essentially worthless. They're going to commoditize it. They're going to basically say, we're going to give you all the hardware to do it. We're going to, they may not need to own it to basically make it available. They give you what you need, the platform to do it. They need it for their AR. They need it for the VR. They need it for a lot of other things, but they may try to control parts of it, but they may really want it to be something that isn't something that is of intrinsic value on its own.
Yeah, that really is the key here. Apple still is a hardware company. They make money by making a physical product and selling that physical product to people at a specific markup. That's two different ways of thinking about it. Either Apple is in, as Alex says, a good position because they could not necessarily be developing the greatest AI products, but simply make sure that every time there is a new AI platform, every time there is a new AI model, that their hardware runs it better than anybody else. So that when Photoshop considers, hey, wouldn't it be great if we could add a descriptive feature that simply says, hey, take the 4 figures to the left, make them a little brighter, but take the 3 trees on the right in the background. I want it to look like it's winter and not fall. When that only happens on Macs and not on Windows machines, that's a big win. On the other hand, if AI truly becomes commoditized, if the thing that people really love about it is not necessarily a feature that's buried inside of an existing app, but simply something as good as the trustworthiness and the scope of Google search, and the reliability of Google search, but also hooked up to a real knowledge navigator style, I can have a conversation with this AI, get the information that I want, and then take actions based on this data that I've learned in a very, very conversational way. Once the iPhone simply becomes a microphone and a speaker, or worse yet, an internet connection to a Bluetooth earbud that I can buy for $80 at any store, that could be a problem if that becomes the next revolution. So we'll see.
So Ben says Microsoft might end up being the big winner here because partly of the investment into OpenAI. They put $1 billion in initially, and allegedly are putting in another $10 billion, incorporating it into their office. But also, he says Bing could be the big winner because putting AI into a search engine might make suddenly Bing competitive against Google. I've mentioned this before, a search engine called Neva, Neva. That's a paid search engine from former Google folks. Let me show you what it does with AI, which is kind of interesting. I'm going to type in your name, Andy, Andy. I have no idea. Andy Anako. I think I got that right. Yeah, and it generates a AI paragraph about you, which is, and then it has footnotes saying what sources it came from, and it's only 2 cases in this case. Let's. What was the name of Nate? The guy. What's the actor's name? In Ted Lasso.
Oh, Nick. What's his name?
We've forgotten. Nick.
Well, I mean, that's part of the bit. He's going to be very angry at us. Nick Mohammed.
What's his last name?
Nick Mohammed.
Mohammed.
Like,
there
like
he
the
is.
guy.
All right, let's see what it generates. So it generates these, and it's not in real time. You can actually see it doing it. And then it has he's best known for his character, Mr. Swallow. He's also known for Nate the Great. Graduated first from the University of Durham. First trip to the U.S. will be to attend next month's Emmy Awards. So I like this. This is their knowledge navigator equivalent to Google, and it's using AI. Bing might do something similar to this,
Right.
but I think these are very basic uses of what I
And
love
it's
what you
wrong.
described, Andy. And it's wrong?
But it's wrong. I mean, next month's Emmy Awards
Are over.
Right.
over.
Okay.
So it's using old
It's
news
out of
sources
date.
and not changing the dates and all of those
There you
things,
go.
right?
Okay, that's
So
good.
a lot of the stuff in my bio is like 5, 6, 7, 8 years out of date.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. All right. So that's there's part of the pitfalls to this. But I think that what
Yeah,
you
see,
just
this is
described as
something-
an image editor using intelligence like that might be really powerful. So there'll be ways to do this, I think, that work and are not risking this factual flaw. He also says that TSMC and NVIDIA might be the big winners because they're doing, with the CUDA cores, they're doing graphics stuff that's very powerful in AI and machine learning.
It could be. It's just that the advantage that Apple has is putting it on the edge. So having people have really powerful processors that do it at their house, rather than and the issue. I mean, I think the NVIDIA stuff's going to do really well, but it's going to be more of a server based. Like cars. You're sending it away somewhere or you're doing things. It's going to be less of like I'm putting this in my house to do this. I mean, some people will,
right?
But it's going to be a lot more expensive. One of those cards I think costs more than considerably more than a Mac Mini. So,
wow. Dwindle asked ChatGPT to tell him a joke about me. And thank you, ChatGPT. It said, I'm sorry. I am not aware of any jokes about Leo Laporte. He is a well-known technology journalist, author, and broadcaster. It would be inappropriate to create a joke about him. Right on, Daddy.
This industry like a colossus. He could break me like a piece of uncooked pasta.
Wow, who's in the pocket of Big Twit
Big Leo.
now?
He's in the pocket of Big Leo. Absolutely.
Oh boy.
So I think this is an important conversation because I do think that Ben is right. The next epoch in computing is going to be all about AI and machine learning, and I'd be very interested to see how Apple can find its way in that. And as of right now,
and I think that the question is do you need to create it or do you need to use it? And I think that's the issue is that there's ways to not create it, but to use it in the things that you're doing that Apple can definitely take advantage of. I mean, when I think about what's going to happen with computer graphics and all these other things as we play with these things, it's going to be very, very creative. And I think that Apple may be angling towards harnessing what's out there rather than trying to, create it themselves.
I like in the pocket of Big Twit. I think that's good. I'm gonna
create a pocket. Yeah, I would say I'm very optimistic about Apple and AI as well. I think it's very clear that the company has spent years thinking about this. I mean, really, its investment in building the neural engine is just a great example of how Apple has because really, if there's anything to show that Apple has you on its radar, it's when it puts you on its Apple Silicon plans, right? Like on the roadmap. And they did that years ago for this stuff, right? And so it feels like they want to be there. They want their hardware to be good at this. They want to be able to leverage that hardware to build their own. I mean, there's a lot of machine learning driven stuff inside that Apple doesn't talk about as much, about like inside the Photos app, in terms of not just scanning your library, but also doing automatic updates, improvements to the photos. They're doing, they've invested a lot of stuff in it. Again, I will say, I wonder about Siri, but leaving that aside, I think that they're not missing the boat on this. This is not one of those areas where we're like, geez, Apple hasn't said anything. Do they even know what's happening? They absolutely do when it comes to machine learning.
Last year's Oscars, Apple made history, winning 3 awards: Best Picture, Best Supporting Actor, and Best Adapted Screenplay for Coda. This year in the Oscars, Apple's nominations are a little bit more scant. This morning's Oscar nominations were announced. They got 2 nominations: Best Supporting Actor for Brian Tyree Henry in Causeway, which I didn't even I
didn't know it was a movie, but it's there.
Okay.
It's on there. It's Jennifer Lawrence.
And they got a nomination for animated short, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse, which is, if nothing else, a dark horse possibility for animated short. But anyway, it's not going to have that big year that it had last year. It's kind of interesting. Not for lack of trying.
Well,
I think
it's
if
that
Will Smith.
Yeah.
If he hadn't done that thing, he might have had a shot with Emancipation. But boy, it's interesting how that got buried. I mean, buried after last year's Oscar slap. Because normally that's the kind of prestige film about a topic.
Oscar bait.
That's Oscar bait. Yep.
It just goes to show you how much this is manipulated by marketing, that once they pull the marketing budget for something, there's just no chance of it finding an audience or getting awards.
Yeah.
And if you're in Hollywood during the Oscar, the voting time,
for your consideration,
billboard. Oh my goodness.
Actually, that's one of the big stories
down.
And we'll talk about it tomorrow a little bit more on Twig. But there was a Best Actress nomination for Andrea Riseborough in a movie, To Leslie, which hardly anybody saw. It only made $27,000, but there was a grassroots campaign among Hollywood on Twitter to get attention for this movie and this actor, and it succeeded. She did get a nomination. Cate Blanchett, Steven Spielberg, Oprah Winfrey, Meryl Streep, Daniel Day-Lewis, Martin Scorsese all tweeted, and they used the exact same phrase: the greatest screen performance in the history of the cinematic medium, which sounds like it was somehow a concerted behind-the-scenes campaign.
A little bit. There were also viewing parties, which is the thing that I like, which is like Jennifer Aniston says you can come over to your house if you watch this movie that nobody saw, and then vote for the star of it. But it worked. It worked. Got nominated.
It's a big deal. Yeah.
And we have to remember that Cate Blanchett was promoting something that's someone who's competing with her. Like she's up for an Oscar for that.
Wow,
so
that's interesting. For
so
Tar,
she was actually,
Tar.
I thought she should get an Oscar for the trailer for Tar, but I was like, I'm not watching that. That's too dark for me.
Oh, I want to see it. It's too dark. You think?
It's not your kind of movie. Too dark for me. I was like, that's not my movie. I need. Yeah.
Riseborough did get a Best Actress nomination for this tiny film, thanks to Twitter. I mean, Twitter still has clout and power. It's kind of amazing. Snubs for other what we thought were shoo-ins, including Viola Davis, who everybody thought would for sure get a nomination. Anyway, interesting. That's the Oscar news. Apple has done something, I think, wonderful. On the 40th anniversary of the computer no one could afford, the Lisa, which came out 1 year before the Mac, was $10,000. I remember pressing my nose against the glass of the computer store saying, I want. I had no idea Mac was in the works, but I couldn't afford a Lisa. They have worked with the Computer History Museum to release the source code. If you go to computerhistory.org, the entire source code for Lisa's operating system and applications software is online, which is pretty cool. You can't redistribute it. Apple's very clear about the license and so forth, but you can read it.
Right.
It includes a lot of Pascal.
And it's all in Pascal.
There's some assembler. It's pretty neat. Did you look at it, Andy?
I did look at it, and it's nice to see. And it's not just the code that's there, but it's also like every module has like a comment that like the unit Twiggy by Dave Offen. And it's like everybody gets their own little credit, their own little bow. And this is part of the history that I think that has to be maintained, especially when you have something as old as the Lisa, where there are no commercial secrets inside here. It's good that this be in a depository, that it be open source, so that people who are trying to figure out what programming was like, what it was like to create such a transformative operating system as a consumer, even though a consumer business piece of hardware, what was that like? What sacrifices did they have to make to deal with the hardware? A lot of times you get explanations of, my God, why did that company make such a stupid decision? It should have been obvious that they should have done this. And then you look at the source code and you realize that, oh, they were working under this limitation where they couldn't possibly have done it that way. Maybe it's not so much that they were idiots or that they were under budget, but so much as they were limited by the hardware they're running on, or what their compiler could do. So yeah, I think that's exceptionally good. It's open source, but of course you can't do derivative projects. It would be lovely if someone could do a really good like native Lisa emulator, or open source native Lisa emulator, because honestly, I mean, there's no bigger Apple geek than me, than I am, but it was only last year that I used a working Lisa for the very first time.
Oh, wow.
And
that's cool.
You can read about this stuff. You can even see like videos and stuff like that, but it's only until you have that mouse in your hand, that keyboard, when you try to do stuff and you realize that, wow, this really, as revolutionary as it was, it really had severe limitations. This would have been such a huge pain in the butt to work with, compared with a text interface, which was blazingly fast and efficient compared to all this sort of stuff. So it's really important that if we're going to keep this history alive, we're going to be able, if other generations are going to be able to learn from what a previous society was able to build, then they're going to have to be able to actually use the thing that people were using. So it's similar for games too, where just as we don't have, it's no problem to see Casablanca now. And so we can continue to reevaluate it in modern context. But the game that everybody was playing like in 1983, 1984, or even like 8 years ago, once they turn off the game servers for the Marvel Avengers game, no one will be able to play it anymore, and we won't be able to tell the story about what this story was like and how it affected people who were using it. So I think this is super great.
It's pretty cool.
I'm hoping that, the 40th anniversary of the Mac is coming next year. I'm hoping that Apple will maybe continue doing this sort of thing where it's contributing to history and giving people access to this now that it's sort of not a commercial concern anymore. I do have 2 tidbits from the source code, because no big secrets in there. My friend James Thompson, developer of pCalc, points out that, and this shows you what is on James's mind. He immediately searched and found 11 occurrences of the F word in the source code. And
it's not source code if there's no F words in the comments. You got it.
And an amazing thing that was found. I'm going to read this verbatim. Welcome to the All Create Preferences window. Through the extensive use of hallucinogens, I have found truth and beauty. However, these same hallucinogens have made me incapable of getting to Dodge Ridge to sell reclaimed ski wax in the parking lot.
What?
Dodge Ridge, a ski area near where I grew up, actually. I mean, it was the 80s. I don't know what to tell you.
I don't know either. Wow.
Yep.
You guys have combed through this a little more than I have.
Look for the F words in the source code. That's a pro tip. That's the pro tip.
Yeah, it's really cool to look at it.
Would be great.
Love it.
I wish there were license archive.org to do a web-based Lisa.
I would love there to be and there may yet be, right? I mean, the license here allows you to do stuff like that. You just can't turn it into a commercial product. But if this would help My guess is that the real way you emulate Elisa is that somebody's got a binary somewhere there where they dump the ROMs and they dumped a disk image and all of that. But having the source code is delightful, and it leads to the possibility that somebody could fix bugs in the Lisa source code and release a new version of the OS. It happened for Apple II Pro DOS, so it could happen for Lisa OS too.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Finally get the Twiggy drive working.
Yeah. Here's the Twiggy code that you were talking about by Dave Offen. It's kind of fun to look at this stuff. I do wish there were more comments. There's some, but it'd be nice to have a little more explanation.
I have heard stories about how, they'll never release the source code to whatever because it's got something copyrighted or there's a licensing hangup or something like that. And this gives me a lot of hope that that's not true. And I think it's the Computer Museum, Computer History Museum is such a great partner here because it allows, like, Apple's never going to do this on its own. And Apple does have like historians on staff and they do have archives, but the History Museum is like not only a vehicle for these sorts of releases, but also sort of an impetus and an enabler. And I don't think on its own Apple is ever going to look backward, and that's another Steve Jobs cultural thing that they put in the DNA there. But they do still have these things that are their property, and after a certain point, getting them out and letting them be public is really a good thing to do. So I'm very glad that they seem to be building a good relationship with the Computer History Museum. Maybe this is the way that old Apple II stuff and the old Mac stuff eventually sees the light of day.
I do think it's hysterical that in the zip files are DS store files. they didn't expurgate those, and they are dated March 2020. So they've been working on this for some time. But those
pandemic project.
Yeah, somebody's pandemic project. Exactly. It's really fun to know that this is out here. Yeah, I think for instance, Microsoft will never release source code for Windows because it is so encumbered. There's so many third-party libraries and things in there that they don't control the source. And I think to some degree, companies are touchy about the code because they don't want the F words in there, or the hallucinogens and stuff like that. So good on Apple for not being so touchy about that.
Yeah, and the last thing you want is to be sued by somebody who bought a company who bought a company who bought a company whose assets are worthless, but you just posted their source code, and the patents will expire, right? But it's still it's an open question, and companies end up being risk averse. So maybe Computer History Museum here, actually went through and made sure that it was going to be okay, and they released it. It's not on Apple's servers. Apple is not doing any of that. But it's good. It's great news. I'm so happy that they did it.
It was one of the things I think that helped operating system development in general was that the original Unix operating system source code for Unix 6 was released with a commentary by John Lyons in 1976. I think a lot of people, certainly Apple people who did operating system development, had read that. I have a copy of it. It's kind of a classic. And it really tells you a lot about what an operating system has to be and what it's required. And it was well commented and fairly easy to read because it's old. It's from the 70s. So I think Apple doing the same thing for a decade later. Bravo! Keep doing it. Keep releasing this stuff. It was commonly, according to Wikipedia, Lyon's commentary on the Unix operating system was the most copied book in computer science. As it should be. Really, you can still buy it. I got a copy on my shelf. Fascinating to read. All right, let's take a little tiny break and then come back with your picks of the week as we continue with MacBreak Weekly. Hey, everybody. Leo Laporte here. I am the founder and one of the hosts at the Twit Podcast Network. I want to talk to you a little bit about what we do here at Twit because I think it's unique. And I think for anybody who is bringing a product or a service to a tech audience, you need to know about what we do here at Twit. We've built an amazing audience of engaged, intelligent, affluent listeners who listen to us and trust us when we recommend a product. Our mission statement as Twit is to build a highly engaged community of tech enthusiasts. Boy, already your ears should be perking up at that because highly engaged is good for you. Tech enthusiasts, if that's who you're looking for, this is the place. We do it by offering them the knowledge they need to understand and use technology in today's world. And I hear from our audience all the time, part of that knowledge comes from our advertisers. We are very careful. We pick advertisers with great products, great services, with integrity, and introduce them to our audience with authenticity and genuine enthusiasm. And that makes our host-read ads different from anything else you can buy. We are literally bringing you to the attention of our audience and giving you a big, fat endorsement. We like to create partnerships with trusted brands who are in it for the long run, long-term partners that want to grow with us. And we have so many great success stories. Tim Broom, who founded IT Pro TV in 2013, started advertising with us on day one, has been with us ever since. He said, quote, "We would not be where we are today without the Twit network." I think the proof is in the pudding. Advertisers like IT Pro TV and Audible that have been with us for more than 10 years, they stick around because their ads work. And honestly, isn't that why you're buying advertising? You get a lot with Twit. We have a very full service attitude. We almost think of it as kind of artisanal advertising, boutique advertising. You'll get a full service continuity team. People who are on the phone with you, who are in touch with you, who support you with everything from copywriting to graphic design. So you are not alone in this. We embed our ads into the shows. They're not added later. They're part of the shows. In fact, often they're such a part of our shows that our other hosts will chime in on the ad saying, "Yeah, I love that." Or just the other day, one of our hosts said, "Man, I really got to buy that." That's an additional benefit to you because you're hearing people our audience trusts saying, "Yeah, that sounds great." We always over-deliver on impressions, so you know you're going to get the impressions you expect. The ads are unique every time. We don't pre-record them and roll them in. We are genuinely doing those ads in the middle of the show. We'll give you great onboarding services. Ad tech with pod sites, that's free for direct clients. Gives you a lot of reporting, gives you a great idea of how well your ads are working. You'll get courtesy commercials. You actually can take our ads and share them across social media and landing pages. That really extends the reach. There are other free goodies too, including mentions in our weekly newsletter that's sent to thousands of fans, engaged fans who really want to see this stuff. We give you bonus ads and social media promotion too. So if you want to be a long-term partner, introduce your product to a savvy, engaged tech audience. Visit twit.tv/advertise. Check out those testimonials. Mark McCrary is the CEO of Authentic. You probably know him, one of the biggest original podcast advertising companies. We've been with him for 16 years. Mark said the feedback from many advertisers over 16 years across a range of product categories, everything from razors to computers, is that if ads and podcasts are going to work for a brand, they're going to work on Twitch shows. I'm very proud of what we do because it's honest, it's got integrity, it's authentic, and it really is a great introduction to our audience of your brand. Our listeners are smart, they're engaged, they're tech savvy, they're dedicated to our network. And that's one of the reasons we only work with high integrity partners that we've personally and thoroughly vetted. I have absolute approval on everybody. If you've got a great product, I want to hear from you. Elevate your brand by reaching out today at advertise@twit.tv. Break out of the advertising norm. Grow your brand with host-read ads on twit.tv. Visit twit.tv/advertise for more details, or you can email us advertise@twit.tv if you're ready to launch your campaign now. I can't wait to see your product. So give us a ring. Our show today, as it often is, brought to you by our club members. Thank you, Club Twit members, for all the contributions you make. And I invite the rest of you who are not yet Club Twit members to join. And I want to, yes, it's $7 a month, so we're asking you for money, but I think we've made it such a great value that I think it's worth much, much more. So let me tell you what you get for $7 a month or $84 a year. You get ad-free versions of all of our shows. We don't need to put ads in the shows for you because you've already supported what we're doing. You're helping keep the lights on and the staff employed and the show's growing. You also get access to what I think is the most exciting community in the world, the Club Twit Discord, a fabulous place to talk about geeky subjects, not just the shows as they're going on, featuring animated GIFs of all kinds of subjects. That's everything, everywhere, all at once, I think. But also, you could talk about movies in there. You can talk about code. You can talk about autos and beer and comic books and gaming, because we've got subjects for everything possible that a geek might be interested in, even pets, recipes. So I think this is a great place to hang. I keep the Discord open day and night. I just love hanging out in there. I think you will too. There's also the Twit Plus feed, which features stuff that does not necessarily get released to the public. For instance, our Hands on Macintosh show, which Micah Sargent helms. Paul Thurrott's Windows, Hands on Windows show. We got the Untitled Linux show, the Giz Fizz. We do events coming up February 9th. Win2 Dow from All About Android will do a fireside chat. Sam Abul Samad coming up in March. And I'm going to interview Daniel Suarez for a special triangulation. Daniel's new book is coming out, Critical Mass. It's going to be great. We love its predecessor, Delta V. So Daniel will join us, and it'll be a special discussion in the club that club members can participate in. We will release that to the world later. In fact, I think a segment will appear on Ask the Tech Guys that Sunday, and then we'll put it out on a triangulation. But that's what happened with This Week in Space, too. The club members paid for it. We were able to launch it there, and as it grew and gained an audience, we were able to get advertising for it, so we were able to put it out in public. In fact, they're going video pretty soon as they continue to grow. So the club is where new ideas start. It's a great way to support what we do. It really helps us out. I would, Lisa and our dream is to get, 5% of people who listen. That's all. 5% of people who listen to our shows to become club members. That would really kind of take the burden off of advertising and let us do a whole lot more. So won't you join that group? twit.tv/clubtwit. It really helps us out a lot, and I think there's a lot of benefits to it as well. Oh, they now have video on the Untitled Linux show. Thank you, Patrick. See, there it goes. You can find me in the club. All right, pick of the week time, and let's start with Jason Snell's pick of the week.
All right. Big news this week. All the Twitter clients are dead officially. Officially.
So sad.
Let's not talk about that. Let's talk about the nice thing, which is that has rushed into production a new app from Tapbots, the makers of Tweetbot, a very, very popular third-party Twitter client. And the new app is called Ivory. It is a Mastodon client, a beautiful one from the makers of one of the best, if not the best, Twitter clients out there. It's iOS only for now, iOS and iPadOS, coming to the Mac at some point here. But they got this out now because, quite frankly, they need to start building a new business because their old business is gone. And it's great. I've been beta testing it for a few weeks. It is so well done. So if you're on Mastodon and you're using an iPhone or an iPad, give it a try. It is a subscription thing because they are trying to make money. This is how they stay in business. There's a 7-day free trial, though, and there's also like a test mode.
I did the $25 for a year. I just want to support these guys.
$15 for a year, and if you want to get extras, you can give them a little more money. And yeah, to support some really great third-party software developers who are now building an app that is not going to be reliant on the whims of a giant service like the Twitter apps were. So Ivory, it's really well done. Like the fit and finish, and I think they're almost embarrassed by it because they've rushed it into production, and it's obviously based on the source code of Tweetbot, but then they've really kind of merged it and changed it and done a bunch of new things with it. And I think they feel like it's too rough and it's missing features and all that. And sure, I guess, but what's there is very, very good. And so although they're saying it's like early access and they're definitely going to add more features to it, I think it is my preferred way to use Mastodon right now. And if you're into Mastodon, check out Ivory.
One of the things that's cool about Mastodon, we have our own Mastodon instance, by the way, which Jason's on, twit.social. One of the things that's cool about Mastodon is because it's based on ActivityPub, which is an open standard. Itself is open. There are a lot of third-party Mastodon clients, some very good ones, actually. I've been including Metatext, which I have been using on iOS up to now. But that's all right. Don't worry about it. But I think this, of course, everybody loves. I'm so interested to see all the activity on Mastodon from people saying, oh, it's out. Now I can use Mastodon. It's like, okay, if that's what it took, I'm happy. It's nice. It's there's missing some features that other clients have, But yeah, I'll be using it. I think it looks pretty good.
I'm going to be that guy and say I think it's the best Mastodon client I've seen. And when I keep hearing about these Mastodon clients that people recommend to me, it feels to me like people are setting the bar way too low. Like I feel like the Twitter clients, Twitterific and Tweetbot really set the bar high. And I think Mastodon has spent the last few years sort of like desperate to have apps that work on Mastodon. And I think we are past that point now where everybody needs to up their game.
Good. Yeah, Metatext is great. Unfortunately, the developer has stopped development on that one, so I've been looking for a replacement. I've been using Ice Cubes, which is another new iOS app, and it's pretty sweet. There's literally a dozen of them if you search for Mastodon on the App Store. But of course, these guys at Tapbots, nobody knows how to make software.
Let 1,000 flowers bloom, but you're right. I mean, these guys they're so good at it.
Do you think Twitterific, Paul Haddad and the Twitterific folks at Icon Factory both are saying, this took us completely off guard. They're begging people, do not ask for a refund. We'll go out of business if everybody asks for a refund. We're sorry this happened. Twitter gave us no warning and pulled the plug. And I'm glad that Tapbots is moving forward with this. And I hope that Icon Factory does too.
What it sounds like Icon Factory, and I know Andy is going to talk about Icon Factory here in a moment, just a little preview for his pick. But it sounds like they invented so much of Twitter, right? They invented the words tweet. They invented Bluebird.
Started it all, The whole,
they popularized the service in the early days. I think they feel so burned by this, and yet they're also, I think, intrigued about the possibilities of the Fediverse. I think what's clear is that they have not rushed in to making a Mastodon knockoff of Twitterific, and Craig Hockenberry, who started Twitterific, said he's really interested in the whole idea of the broader Fediverse. So I wonder if they want to do something that is not as focused on just Mastodon, but that will let you suck in information from all sorts of different federated sources, and then also post to different sources that maybe take a little more time and come up with a little more a different take on it. I'd love that, but I would love to see it because Twitterific has been my go-to Twitter app and one of my most used apps for the last decade, and I miss it already. Yeah. So I hope they do something.
Yeah. Ivory, it's nice because Tapbots, Paul, I guess, knew this was coming, so he's been working on it for a lot longer, and it's pretty polished. It's very close to done, so I'm glad so it was for a while, it was under a test flight, but it is now it's hard to find in the App Store.
It's in the store. Apple search index takes a while to update across everything. Yeah. So direct links will get you there now, and eventually it'll show up in search.
Go to tapbots.com and you can get it from there. That's what I ended up doing. It'll link you over. So go on your phone, Safari, to tapbots.com and go from there. Eventually it'll show up, and a good thing. Very happy. And they're also on. They're on their own Mastodon server at tapbots.social. It's at Ivory at tapbots.social. It's really interesting to watch what's happening. The growth of Mastodon is kind of amazing. We've had a Mastodon instance for 3 years, and all of a sudden, whoa, whoa. Andy, you wanted to talk a little bit about Twitterific folks, the Icon Factory folks.
Yeah, absolutely, because I had the exact same sort of reaction that Jason did. That Twitter apps. This is one of the places where the app studios in the Apple universe are some of the most creative, insightful, elegant, and artistic app studios out there. I mean, they're not just, hey, let's just put a scrolling list into a view. When you tap an item in the list, you open an expanded view. Boom, done. Ship it. Charge $10 for it. They really find elegance and purpose to every single thing they do. So they had their own post on their own blog about same thing. Like, hey, this took us completely by surprise. We had no idea this was going. Twitterific has gone to the great birdhouse in the sky, they said on their blog post. And it immediately made me figure out I need to give these people some money for something right now, basically to show them how much I love them. And I was surprised, and it was not hard to find something to buy. I made Tot a pick of the week a long time ago because it's one of my favorite, probably my only really favorite menu bar app. It is a simple, like 8-page text notepad that lives inside your menu bar, which means that it's available everywhere and it's synced across all of your Mac devices. So and it's so many times where you just need to type down. Someone's going to give you an address over the phone. You just need a text container to type that into, or you have one of the shows that you do has switched to a Zoom ISO, and now you have to remember a code that you have to type in every single week.
Did you taught us?
And you need to have that. And well, yeah, it won't autofill, so I have to like keep it handy. So I swear the first 2 times that I was like 5 minutes late, it was because, oh damn, I know it's in an email. Oh, why didn't I save it someplace? And it's just. And it's so clean and it's so handy. It is no bigger than it has to be, no more complicated than it has to be. And it's free for Macs. The Mac version, which you get through the App Store, absolutely free. They charge $20 all in forever for the iOS, iPadOS version. And I never bought it simply because I don't have an iPhone and I have an iPad, but I don't use it that way. And of course, like just a few days ago, I of course shelled out $20 for the iOS version of Todd because I wanted to give them some money. And it is great. As soon as I installed it, immediately, like, no, you need to connect to this. You need to use this magic token. It's like, oh, I open the app and now it has all of my 8 pages of notes. And it's so perfect. Again, simple, elegant, beautiful. Can't wait to see what they have going next. They have some other cool apps that I don't have as much experience with as Tot, but it's one of those few app companies where whenever they come out with something new, I'm interested in checking it out because it's going to be something interesting.
Taught, but yeah, we had Craig Hockenberry on Tech News Weekly on Thursday. Micah interviewed him. Really interesting guy, and the story is tragic, but I hope that Tapbots and Icon Factory and all the other third-party developers find a new way forward. And the good news is Icon Factory does have a lot of these great apps, so visit iconfactory.com.
Yeah.
And
their Linea Sketch app for the iPad is amazing. If you like to draw on your iPad, they have so many apps. It's throw them some money.
Yeah,
and they're really they're designers first, as the name might tell you, Icon Factory, and so all their stuff is gorgeous, just gorgeous. Speaking of gorgeous, Alex Lindsay has a pick of the week.
Yeah, so 2 days left on the Affinity sale. So they have a sale that right now that I think you can get 40% off. It's $99 total for designer, publisher, and photo. And this is what I'm using 99% of the time. There are a handful of things in Photoshop that I still go back to because I've been using it for 30 years. Not because it's not an Affinity photo, right. I just can't find it. But otherwise, I got actually into Affinity Photo because it had a very rare little thing that I could take spherical images and put them into a 360 sphere and be able to paint things out. And the reason for that is you're trying to paint tripods out of spherical images. And so I used it. That's how I started using it. But now I use it for almost everything. So so when I'm building something, when I'm putting something together, I'm using photo mostly. I use a little bit of designer. I haven't needed to publish very many things, so I still so I don't use publisher as much. But what I would say is that it's a really solid product. There's a lot of things about it that are faster than Photoshop, and for $99, you're getting 3 different apps. And it's I probably am in photo at least once a day to do something or to make something work. So it's a great product, and it's 40% off for the next. And it's not a subscription; it's just a one-off $99, and this is the second version or whatever. And but I'm a pretty long-term user, and I think it's worth the.
I have to say the ability to be able to do this on an iPad is fantastic. Yeah. It makes the iPad, especially if an iPad Pro, is such a great tool for photographers, and thanks to a few programs, but Affinity Photo is absolutely the Photoshop equivalent. It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, really good.
Good. Through January 25th, 40% off. We're supporting some good indie developers here today. I like that. Very nice. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Jason Snell is at, of course, sixcolors.com. sixcolors.com/Jason will give you a long list of all the things he does. He's the hardest working man in show business. It's great to have you on, Jason. I appreciate it.
Always great to be here at the end of a very busy 6 days of just me and a laptop.
Yeah,
locked in
read
a
his
room.
review. Read his review.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well worth reading. And even I think you even filed while we were doing the show today. Oh, Dan did that. Okay, about Ivory. All right.
I multitask, but not that much.
I like Micah getting a little plug on here. That's nice. Thank you for that, Dan. How's the baby, by the way? Is he doing well?
I think so. I mean, we managed to do a live stream for an hour yesterday, and there was no baby crying in the background. So, I mean, progress.
Good. Yeah, watch that live stream as Dan and Jason break down their reviews of their M2 MacBook Pro and their M2 Mac Mini. That's on YouTube. What's the name of that YouTube channel?
6 Colors.
Easy to remember.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Andy, when are you going to be on GBH next?
This Friday at 12:30 in the afternoon Eastern Time. You can go to wgbhnews.org to listen to it live or later. I believe it's also going to be on the GBH YouTube channel, so WGBH News on YouTube. And if you're in Boston, head on over to the Boston Public Library because we're doing it live in the Boston Public Library studios with this big cafe around it. So buy yourself a cup of coffee, a cookie, and enjoy.
Yay! Inatco.com. IHNAT.
Just down the street from the Apple Store. Yes.
And Alex Lindsay, you find him every morning at officehours.global. Every day, it's a new day with Office Hours with new content. You can join the Zoom call or just watch their videos on the website or on YouTube. Today, playoff graphics.
We were looking at the playoff graphics from the last couple of weekends, and we were kind of breaking it down. So we were kind of talking about what it takes to do them, how it works.
Oh, I have to watch that.
And what's funny is I gathered a whole bunch of stuff, and we barely got through any of it. We were just so many questions and chat. And the thing is when your audience is deep. When we went, I'm not sure what they use here. This is there was an AR thing that was sitting on the they were sitting on the field. One of those new things where the 3D's on the field. And I'm talking about that, and someone in the chat goes, that was a Cinema 4D that was driven into a VisRT.
Oh my God!
Like list exactly how it's actually done. And so it's a very interesting, such an interesting group because the folks in the chat sometimes know more than the panel, and the panel is answering all the questions, and then there's tons of people asking. It's a very organic thing.
I am sad to say that the NFL has knocked you off the YouTube.
Yeah, I'm sure. We knew it would. We told
it was inevitable. I looked at it. I thought, how did they get away with this?
No, we didn't. We didn't get it. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see how much we can put back up, or we'll put it somewhere else.
Yeah. But you got to do what we do. Yeah. Not tell anybody. Yeah.
And when we do them, we know that we'll get through the live. We just don't know if we'll get through the post.
Right.
And so but tomorrow we've got Gary Trenda from Sound Devices. He manages their RF application. So if you're interested in wireless, this is probably, one of the world experts in wireless mics and wireless transmission. Is going to be on the show and answering people's questions about your wireless transmitters. So it should be very geeky.
Yesterday was a focus on sales. So they cover all kinds of stuff.
I'm speaking at the Silicon Valley video thing on Thursday. It's a new conference, and I'm actually going. My first time I've been to a conference in a couple years, but we're going to cover that on Friday. So we're kind of the gamut of covering the conferences, talking about sales, talking about all those things. So it's a good week.
And last week you talked to Renee Ritchie about YouTube. So that's a good
Renee
one.
was on.
That's a good one. Officehours.global. If you want to hire Alex, 090.media. That's his day job. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Jason. Thanks to all of you for joining us. We do MacBreak Weekly on a Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1900 UTC. You can watch or listen live at live.twit.tv, chat live at irc.twit.tv. Club members, of course, can chat with us in our Discord. For more information, twit.tv/clubtwit. After the fact, on-demand versions of the show available at the website, twit.tv/mbw. There's a YouTube channel dedicated to MacBreak Weekly. There's also, of course, probably the easiest way to do it is subscribe. You'll see big subscribe buttons on our website, or just open up your favorite podcast client and search for Twit or MacBreak Weekly, and you can get it automatically the minute it's available. We thank you so much for listening or watching, and we hope we'll see you next week. But now I'm sad to say I've got to tell you to get back to work, because break time is over. Bye-bye.
Hey, we should talk Linux. It's the operating system that runs the internet, but your game consoles, cell phones, and maybe even the machine on your desk. But you already knew all that. What you may not know is that Twit now has a show dedicated to it, the Untitled Linux Show. Whether you're a Linux pro, a burgeoning sysadmin, or just curious what the big deal is, you should join us on the Club Twit Discord every Saturday afternoon for news, analysis, and tips to sharpen your Linux skills. And then make sure you subscribe to the Club Twit exclusive Untitled Linux Show. Wait, you're not a Club Twit member yet? Well, go to twit.tv/clubtwit and sign up. Hope to see you there.